Welcome to the Oroville City Council meeting of April 19th, 2022, where we are reconvening from closed session where direction was given and no action was taken. I'm calling this meeting to order. Will you stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance? Salute. Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag Looking for a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Got all moved.
Motion carries with 7 yeses and 0 nos.
At this time, we'll open the meeting up for public communication. This is time for the public to communicate with the council on non-agenda items. Madam Clerk, do we have any speakers?
Mr. Mayor, our first speaker is Darlene Smith.
I just have a few notes here. They're kind of all ran together, but it is about El Modelo Fire Department, and I hope that's okay. I have some concerns because they have been closed down, closed out of business, defunct, whatever, for the last 15 months, approximately. During that time, we had an incident where we needed help, and Palermo was speedy, ambulance service was speedy, so I feel no loss with El Modelo. I was told that until the district directs the auditor to not collect the assessment in the 22-23 or is dissolved. Personally, I'm voting for dissolved. We're paying on our property alone approximately $300 a year, $500 a year. We have no services for 15, 16 months. We've done quite well without them. One of my other issues is I requested El Modelo to give me some information. I did the Freedom of Information Act. I asked for are there updates on their training? I understand they weren't trained properly. So they needed to do 200 hours approximately to be trained, to be qualified, to go out on fires. Has that been done? Nobody will answer. No response. I also looked up their phone number. I looked it up in 2 places. One says permanently closed. So on that note, why would you call them? They're permanently closed. I looked them up on another site. It says temporarily closed. Which way do we go? Are they temporarily closed or are they permanently closed? They're defunct. That means they're dead. They're out of business. They're no longer in existence. So we've went every avenue that we can as taxpayers. How do we get help to get rid of this off our tax bill? And I really think being that they've been gone for 15, 16 months, we need a rebate. I don't know if anybody else feels like that, but I feel like I'm being raped of my tax dollars. They're not here. They're not performing. They're not sending out any paperwork to prove to us that they're doing anything to up themselves. So.
Time.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Dennis Smith.
First of all, thanks for letting me speak. And my subject is also on Elmadale. I was told by LAFCO that this agency has the authority to shut it down. All they have to do is initiate a resolution of dissolution. I'm asking that that happens. We have been subject to variable lawsuits possible because of the district running situations where they're not supposed to be. We have an administrator that we've been told that is running around doing things on the district. Well, the district is supposed to be shut down. So there is nobody that's supposed to be doing this stuff. Also, the city of Oroville annexed from Wyandotte to Ithaca. Is the Elmadale still collecting that property tax into their money, or is the city doing that? If that's the case, then Elmadale's district is very small and it's basically impossible to afford the taxation to run that business. I don't know if I'm making any sense, but I'm trying. As my wife said, well, a few minutes ago, we pay almost $500. What are we getting for $500? I know the district owes this city a lot of money, which means I'm on the hook for a lot of money. I know there's legal mumbo jumbo involved in all of that, but still, I'm reliable and accountable for that tax money. So if they're wasting it, it's like this board here. If you're wasting our money, you're liable. So thing I am is I'm asking for help from this board. We have contacted the tax office in Reading. We have contacted James Gallagher. We have contacted Doug LaMaffa. We are waiting back for a response from them. We may get it, we may not get it. But the only option we have at this particular moment was we were told that by LAFCO that this agency can shut them down. So we're requesting that happen. Thank you.
Mr. Smith, Councilmember Smith wishes to comment.
To Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith to Mr. Smith.
Okay.
So I just want to point out that in our discussions with the fire and we're going to have I think at the end of this meeting, some conversation regarding the fire service. But that's a point that at least myself, I've personally made that needs to be addressed. That's an issue. However, it is a special district, and this board has no jurisdiction oversight over El Madeo. So that's, but at the same time, it's something that we certainly need to address, and I would agree with that. So it's being worked on.
Well, why would LAFCO say that this district did?
And we're looking into that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Bill Spear.
Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, City Council, had a wonderful Resurrection Sunday. Went up to the Memorial Cemetery with the Church of Oroville. Had a wonderful service up there. The tomb was empty. Jesus is alive. Great news. I'd like to pray with you this evening. Father God, we thank you for your son Jesus, that he's alive. We thank you that he lives in us, that he has a plan and purpose. And this evening I lift up our city council to you and pray by the power of your spirit for supernatural wisdom, supernatural guidance, supernatural provision for our city, for all of the people who serve, for our police department and our fire department. Pray for our whole county, but Oroville being the county seat, we pray special blessings that you would make us a city on a hill, a light on a shelf. Use us as an example for other cities to see what Oroville is doing and say they want our policies. Let us see how we are dealing with the issues and the problems, how we are dealing with the homeless, how we're dealing with how we're treating the public, how we're treating each other. We thank you that you are always there, that you will never leave us nor forsake us. And we continue to lift up the people in Ukraine who are suffering, and we pray for your church, the persecuted church. We pray for the suffering. And as we have opportunity, as you put people in our path, use us to make a difference. Use us to shine your light. Use us to shine your love. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Our next speaker is the cameraman.
There we go. Good evening, Oroville County Council. This is my little sign I made. I have it hanged up in my office. You know how workplaces have those signs that, we've gone this many days without an accident? Well, this is my sign of this many days without a public records request response. So I keep updating it as we go along. I don't know why with my request relating to my incident, it's taken so long to get a response, but it is what it is apparently. But, I'd just like to briefly talk on the records. Things have changed. It used to be real simple with the records in the police department. I used to be able to go in the police department until somebody decided to drive their truck into it. Can't really control those people, but ever since then, the police department lobbies, kind of gone through some phases of availability. So because of that, records have all been moved to the City Hall here. And it used to be really easy. I used to walk in, say hello to Miss Triplett. Hey, this is what I need. Can you get this? Sure, no problem. Give me a minute. Print it out. There we go. And then she didn't work there anymore. I don't know what happened. Asked around. Supposedly, I guess she got scared away from working at the police department. I heard one story that formerly the previous chief set off a flash grenade or something in the lobby, like a firework or something, and that terrified her. That's one story I cannot confirm. It was just rumor told to me, but if that's why she left, I don't know. If she was scared to work there or what her deal was, or if she got a better job somewhere else, I can only wish her the best of luck. But she was great for records, and now everything's got to go through City Hall. It's got to get approved by Mr. Huber. It's this whole process became more complicated than it needed to be. I know the guy driving his truck through the lobby, that's only part of the issue here, but it's just been so complicated since then. And then we're still waiting for this lobby to get repaired. It's when is that ever going to be open? And finally, I know last meeting, Mr. Mayor, we had some banter about electric vehicles. And I wanted to comment about that I didn't want to take up time since it wasn't during public comment. I'm glad the city looked into that option. And hey, I think electric vehicles are great. I wish they'd be more practical. They need to be studied and more developed. It's not like the movie you see, Honey, I Blew Up the Kid, where we can just drive around with a solar panel on our car. It's a little more complicated than that, but the reality is, we can put gas in our car and go 200 miles or whatever our tank capacity is before the next fill up, in 5 minutes, but to go 200 miles in an electric car, we got to wait 3 hours, 5, 10 hours, until that changes. I don't see electric cars becoming the future. So, hey, I agree with you on that. Thank you.
Kay Castro.
Good evening, everyone. I'm here to make the bi-weekly plug for Feather Fiesta Days. I have applications here for anyone who is interested, and I wanted to thank a lot of community support for coming together. The Eagles Club with the Rib Fest on April 30th, the Kitties Parade, the Kiwanis Kitty Parade on Friday, the Exchange Club Parade on Saturday, and there will be some other events going on downtown that we're very excited about as well. And I wanted to thank city staff and Mr. Legrone for waiving some of the fees for the nonprofits. It makes a big difference. These events cost us money. We don't really make any money on it, so thank you. And DWR came through with the chamber, and you can have them to thank for all the porta potties, which are very important. Clap for the porta potties. Thank you.
Our last speaker is Stephanie Irish.
I'm here on the same subject, El Medeo. I realize that El Medeo serves as its own district, also known as a special district. My concerns are about my taxes still going to El Medeo, even though they closed their doors as of 12/25/2020. Those of us in the district trying to get info are just getting blanket statements or getting the runaround. The concern is they are still being allowed to spend our tax dollars to hire new employees and continue on as if they are a functioning station, just without providing us service. It's called taxation without representation. People have tried to attend their board meetings and have left more frustrated than informed. I wonder if there is such transparency with El Medeo, then why are their board meetings not video recorded? I called the auditor's office after this last meeting last week on the 13th and to get info. I have the names of the gals I spoke to, but I prefer not to name them here. One answered the phone and told me that El Medeo was reopening really soon and she was really excited. I said, "Where did you get that info?" I hadn't heard that. She said a guy from the board, a board member, called and told them. I asked if she spoke to the person who called and she said, no, she was just told. I asked if it was in writing. She said, no, the board member said it's in the minutes and they're waiting for the minutes. I asked for the person who called's name and I was given a name that seems to be thrown around a lot that I'll leave out of this as well. That person is indeed not a board member. I asked to have Graciela call me because she is the one that knows all the ins and outs, according to the girl I was speaking to with El Medeo. I said, great, and she took my number. Graciela did call me, and she said she would send me the meeting minutes and answer to all the questions her and I talked for probably 20 minutes. That didn't happen. So I called back Monday and spoke to another gal, and she said Graciela was out. Later, the same day, I received an email stating that all of this correspondence has to be approved through the county council, so she couldn't send me the minutes or anything until it's approved, and no answers to my questions. It would be approximately 10 days. We're wondering where we go from here. The Attorney General, DOJ, I'm perfectly fine with my tax dollars going to the station providing the service for our district. But it seems El Medeo is not paying them, and I'm not okay with that. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, that is the last of the public speakers for non-agenda items.
Okay, thank you. Looking for a motion to adopt the consent calendar.
Mr. Mayor, I do have one speaker for item 6.
Looking for a motion to adopt the consent calendar, pulling item number 6.
So moved.
Madam Clerk, you have a speaker on item number 6.
Motion carries.
Who is it?
Bill Spear.
Yes, please.
I wasted some paper and printed it out. I came here on the 5th to talk about the posting for the bid, and it was, the last date to receive the posting was on the 7th. It was 2 days before. You can see clearly there, it says a walkthrough, mandatory walkthrough was on the date that it was, but it doesn't have the place where the walkthrough was or the time. I have my phone records that I called the city, and on my phone records, the city never called back. I have on my phone records, I called Wade. Wade never called back. I stated on our last meeting that I would really like the opportunity to bid on the job. It should have been, the place should have been posted, and the time should have been posted where it was. I came down to the city that day and I asked the ladies in the office, where's the bid at? They didn't have any idea. So, we'd like to ask the city attorney, is that legal? Can you have a mandatory bid?
If I can jump in, Mr. Mayor, I can answer the question. I mean, it is posted. If you click on the RFP, which is on here, it brings up the RFP. The second page in the RFP shows the date, the time, and the location of the walkthrough. So it has been posted. It was adequately noticed. It was properly noticed. I don't know what happened here. So one thing that I am going to do to address this issue, because I understand Mr. Spears' concern, I am going to change the front of our building a little bit, and in the box that we have out there where the agendas normally are, we're going to start posting all of these so that it is readily available to you out there, because I do understand, the confusion that can be created, but it was properly noticed. It is properly, everything on here is correct on this. We followed the steps. It is in there. It's the second page of the RFP. This is, what you're seeing here is a printout of the screen that says that there is an RFP, but then you have to go to the RFP to get the information.
Yeah, let me address this, and I appreciate the stoppage of his time. Let me address that further. This, as the city administrator said, this only gives information regarding the RFP. You do have to click to see what are the qualifications, where do you turn it in? Is it in paper, in writing, in email? The forms that you need to fill out, you've got to click on the RFP. That's where all the information is. And so, in looking at, and I just went and looked at it right now. It is there. It does have the time. It does have the address. So I would have to say, just based on what I'm seeing here, it is sufficient. Well, let me rephrase that. It is sufficient under the law. Whether we want to improve our process, I think that we can always improve our process. I will say this as a general statement. None of us are perfect. We can always improve, and where we can improve, we should improve. And, there's a saying that I sometimes use, when we know better, we do better.
Vice Mayor Thompson.
Yeah, absolutely. I can see and agree that under the legal terms, it was there. But had you not said you got to click on that, and I'm pretty computer savvy, I wouldn't necessarily say I would have caught that, to have something above it that would have said, click this link for more information or to follow to the next step. But it's not there at all. It just says tree pruning services, then RFP, and then the issue date, mandatory walkthrough, and proposal due date. I don't necessarily see a huge rush where we have to make the decision today. I completely hear and see whether this was, Bill Spears or P31 or any other entity that says, hey, I really would like to have applied for this. This is not the first time he was here. So in my voice, I would like to see it put back out so that it can be not just legally, but ethically done.
Here's where, let me give you a little maybe expand the viewpoint a little bit. If this is all you're looking at, you have no idea what the scope is. You have no idea what you're bidding on. You have no idea what you're bidding on. You don't know if you're bidding on part of the city, all of the city, a portion of the city, some trees, a certain type of tree. You have no information on the bid. You have to go to the RFP to look for the scope. You have to go to the RFP to look for what it is that you actually bidding on.
Right. And so just having that clearly from the beginning so that somebody knows turn left here to get
Mr.
to
Vice-
the end destination, you want to have directions to be able to get there.
Vice Mayor, if I could, this doesn't do the website justice. I mean, when it's in color, the RFP is a different color. So there is something significant about that would indicate to click on this. The other part of this too is 5 people made it through this walkthrough and did the walkthrough, and 4 bid. So, I mean, in all fairness to everyone, it's, to the other 5 companies as well, it's, they got there. They followed the process. They followed the timelines. So, I understand the frustration of not getting there, and I get that. I mean, but I think on the other side too, we have to be as equally fair to the companies that were there.
as well, the fact that he called and asked for more information, did not receive the information, showed up here on the date, asked for more information, wasn't given information. I hear you that 5 made it, but the fact that, he clearly wasn't lazy in the process, didn't, bypass the time and just not get the opportunity. I mean, I'm believing the benefit of the doubt that he has records that he made a call, didn't get a call back, and showed up on the day, still looking for information, didn't get that. So there's, legally sure, but unless there's a huge rush, if they've already done the walkthrough, then I don't necessarily know if they would need to do it again, but maybe to extend it so that we can have the opportunity, equal opportunity for all, maybe, no offense to, Mr. Spears, Pastor Spears, but maybe, computer-wise, these guys caught something that obviously he did. So that's my only point. I would like in the future at least to have a, again, we can learn from our, click on this link below for more information. And then as well, for those up front who may get calls, that they also know at least where to send somebody who gives a phone call. So I would, in my voice, I would love to have it extended so that it can be open for everybody who wishes to put a bid on for the city.
I would also like to add, I looked at all of the other things that were put out for bid from the city, and on that front page, as soon as you click on it, when it said mandatory walkthroughs, all of them were listed, the time and the place where the walkthroughs were. It was only on this one item that it didn't have it. And the fact that I did come down here and I did call the city and I did call Wade and never did get a call back.
Councilmember Riggs.
Skip me.
Oh, Councilmember Smith.
Okay.
That's okay. I'm inclined to agree with Vice Mayor Thompson on this. As I'm just reviewing, the website, it's just 3 letters, RFP, the acronym, but there's nothing to state click here or anything like that. But, and I think, on the legal end, perhaps we did meet the legal requirements. However, I think when someone reaches out to staff, the front-end staff, as I think indicated by Mr. Legron, we have to have that posted. And I just think a question of due diligence, I think. And then the staff should have been informed that, this was the deadline, and they should have been able to give proper direction, so.
Councilmember Riggs.
Thank you. My question is, totally understand the desire to extend it. My question would be, how does that affect the integrity of the bid process?
Well, you can't simply extend it right now because we've already opened the bids. So if you were to simply extend it, you now have given an unfair advantage to anyone who hasn't bid because now everybody else has stepped on the line, so to speak. The only thing you can do now is reject all, you can either accept it as is and issue the contract to the lowest bidder who complied with the RFP, or you can reject all bids and go out and rebid. You can start the process over again. Those are your only 2 options. I will note every single item, and Mr. Spear is correct, every single item that has a walkthrough did have the date of the walkthrough and the time. Not all had the location. In fact, most don't have the location. Some do, some don't. But every single one has the word RFP with the underline. Every single one. None of them say click here. And so I have to say this. If you're only looking at this splash screen, you have no idea what you're bidding on. There's no way you can look at this and say, well, I'm going to bid on that. You can't. You have to click on the word RFP.
Yeah.
You have to.
I knew what the.
Well, did you click on the RFP link? Why not?
I was just looking for the time. Come down, it wouldn't be a big issue last time. Usually it's not a big deal.
Well, I will say this. It is to me axiomatic. It is obvious. You have to click on that link.
I'd like to comment on that because it's obvious to you if you're a computer savvy person. I'm not, because I did go to the to the website as well. And it being late at night, I became a little frustrated and just shut it off. But I'm not a computer savvy person, so I'm not one to compare with say you or Mr. Legrone. You do these things all day long. But I'm inclined to, being a contractor and being subject to these things in my history, I'm inclined to err to the side of caution. So I'm wondering what this council wants to do about this.
Mr. Mayor, can I-
Councilmember Smith.
Yeah, I guess a part of that goes to the expectation of what that walkthrough dynamic is like. If it was necessary to have that paperwork, that RFP in front of the contractor prior to that meeting, or if that was customary and ordinary business due diligence would require that, then I would totally 100% agree. But if there's been a previous relationship and he just shows up, gets the scope of the work, and then goes back and then, puts in the numbers, then I would be, back to the comments that we've already made. So I'm not familiar enough with the process, what that looks like or what that expectation, customary, ordinary, business, how we've been doing things in the past. So there was an expectation. I call the city, no one can give me direction, time, and place. So it kind of goes, I don't have the answers to that, but I would like to know before I vote on this. What is that typical expectation? In other words, when I come, do I need to have that RFP and all that documentation in front of me? Has that been kind of the ordinary course of business?
Yeah, I have not participated in any of these walkthroughs, so I can't tell you what the experience is like.
Because then that would be a valid point. How can you make a bid on something you don't even know what it is? But if it's just been, have a meeting, connect, and then I'm going to go back to my office and then work the numbers from there, then not so much.
Well, this is not a unique project. We do this every year, right? So he would be familiar with it. Did you not have the contract before?
Well, I
Okay, so
think we're getting a little far out into the contract here. What we're discussing is, was it noticed properly?
Right.
I mean, and it was, it's the second page. I mean, so I'm not disputing any of it. I'm not trying to argue with anyone or anything. I mean, and I'm not advocating either direction. I mean, it's, was it noticed? I mean, I guess is the question. And, from the perspective in which I'm looking at it, yes, it was.
Vice Mayor Thompson.
Yeah, and I get your point. I see that as I don't see that as invalid. My only thought is, we don't want to play favorites with anybody. And we also don't want to come across as weeding out anybody either, people who are more savvy, people who are more, I don't want to make a comparison on physically able, but somebody who's able to, quickly go upstairs, or somebody who doesn't computer savvy, not saying you're not, but somebody who can easily recognize that and be a quick jump up the stairs, and somebody who would like to have a little on-ramp that could see that, oh, this is my avenue to get to be. So on that side of not, I want to play favorites, and I'm not playing favorites. I'm saying we need to be equal access to everybody. And so somebody who's not computer savvy, I don't see this as equal access.
When I came down to the office, someone in the office should have been able to click on it and say, hey, here's where it is. They're the city's office, they work for the city. I'm saying, hey, where's the bid at today? I'm here on the day. They could have clicked on it and said, hey, it's right here. I put the effort in.
Councilmember Riggs.
Thank you. I think we'd agree. We have a improvement for customer service opportunity. My question would be to Ms. Nevers. Are there any ramifications if we were to dismiss it and re-put it out for new bids? Is there a tight timeline, or are there additional risks or liabilities that would pose to the city?
No, not necessarily at this point.
Okay.
We were just looking to get this moving forward so that we can begin our typical tree trimming process for the year. But if we push it out it would end up being another 30 to 60 days to push it out.
Well, I make a motion, even though we may be, after 30 to 60 days, back at the same place with the same company, which is totally fine with me, that we reject on the basis of making sure that this is accessible to everybody and put it out for bid.
Looking for a second.
I'll second that.
I'm not in a quandary over what my vote is. I think everyone knows. Some things, if you do for one, you must do for all. And so it's pretty black and white to me.
Motion carries with 4 yeses and 3 nos.
Okay, we are at our public hearing time, but that needs to be at 5:15, so let's, before we go into regular business, let's do our council announcements and eat up some time to public hearing. Does anyone have any announcements from the council?
I will in a moment.
Does anyone have any future agenda items?
How's my wall process going?
The traffic plan has been approved for the wall, and they are set to begin work. I haven't been given an exact day, but in the next couple of weeks to a month, they'll begin work there.
Not that it's my wall, but just.
No,
It
you
act-
said it, you can't take it back.
We met with them actually last week about the wall. So
Great.
that's, it is ever slowly moving forward. It's
Yes.
glacial.
It's only taken
all.
5 years.
Right. Yeah, no, the walkway was probably 4 foot wide when we started, and the erosion has it now down to about, 3. So it gives you any kind of idea.
Councilmember Smith, you
Yeah.
wish to speak?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So regarding Feather Fiesta Days, it is happening. We have a webpage for that, visit Oroville.com under signature events. You can also find it at featherfiestadays.org, I believe. But the easiest is visit Oroville.com under signature events. And so there's just a lot of stuff going on. I encourage everyone to jump on there and take a look. Just a couple of highlights. The YMCA is going to sponsor Healthy Kids Day on the 30th of April. And then the Eagles Club is going to have a rib festival. And yes, there will be porta potties and trash cans provided. So thank you, DWR, for that generous donation of that infrastructure. I mean, nobody wants to talk about that stuff, right? But somebody's got to take out the trash. And then, again, there's just a lot of things on here. Kiwanis, of course, is doing the Kitty Parade on Friday of the 6th of May. And then, of course, the big deal is our parade on the 7th. And, of course, the Exchange Club is the host of that particular event, and we appreciate all the effort that they do to make sure that happens. And I think there's still time. Is there still time to sign up so you can go to the Exchange Club? Or you can go to visitoroville.com and you can navigate from there and get on board and get an application if you want to be a part of the parade. So the more the merrier, right? It's an Oroville tradition. And then there's just a plethora of things happening in the downtown area throughout the week. So I just encourage you to get on there and take a look at that. So, and it's continually updated. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Pittman.
Yeah, thank you. One of the agenda items I'd like to see in the future is, and I'm aware the Parks Department or Parks Commission has some discussions about improving security in the parks and the possibility of hiring private security. I'd like to see that eventually brought forward to us as a cost because we've already had too many near misses with our park facilities. And I'm aware of at least 3 little burn sets down at Lot Home St. Park on the outside of the property. So we have a population that's invading our parks, And I think the loss of public confidence in our parks is something that we just can't tolerate. So I'd like to see a potential security improvement, whether it's private security or it's, something done with the police department. I don't really care. I just want to see an improved security level in our parks because our public is not safe and secure with them. And I think it's our responsibility to bump that up. And I'm quite aware of many instances with the parks, and we have had the police department respond and cite some individuals, but it's growing. And I don't want to see the same thing occur that's happened in other communities near us. That's a big trouble. And it's better that we get ahead of it than behind it and fight it from the behind here. So something along the lines. I don't really care who. I noticed all the state facilities have private security in place. The the fish hatchery. We were up there early at 7 o'clock last Saturday with the Rotary Club doing some activities. And there was 3 cars in there of private security. So I just note that. Some options to that effect. That's it.
Is there anyone who wanted to agree with Mr. Pittman, Councilmember Pittman, to get that on the agenda? I'll agree with you.
I'll agree with that.
Okay, if there are no more future agenda items, administration reports, Mr. LeGrone?
Excuse me, I have none, Mr. Mayor.
Amy, Mrs. Bergstrom? Mr. Belser? Ms. Nevers?
None at this time.
Ms. Duncan?
I have nothing.
Mr. Attorney?
Well, I hate to keep the streak going, but I have nothing.
Everybody got shy.
Yeah.
Okay.
I might add one question of the city attorney. There was a mention about the state coming up with legislation about creating zones in local jurisdictions. Have you heard anything more about that?
Creating zones.
Zones of, the local government could identify zones where certain population couldn't happen?
Yes, there's a proposal, a legislative proposal, and I can't remember the legislator that proposed it, but the bill is still pending.
Okay.
The proposal is such that the local agency would be able to identify protected zones where you would be able to say, right now, for example, there's a Supreme Court case out of Boise, Idaho that talked about.
Martin v. Boise.
That's it, Martin v. Boise, about, it was generally speaking, it struck down the, what do they call it, the sit, lie, sleep rules for homeless individuals. And it essentially said that if the public agency has sufficient places to take them to for, to sleep or for a housing purpose, even if it's temporary, you could then force someone to leave public property to go to, to stay in a shelter or, in a bed or in some type of housing. Generally speaking, most public agencies don't have enough. And so it has become sort of understood that individuals who pitch a tent on public property can remain there. The purpose of the legislation is to identify protected zones where you can say, the legislative body, in this instance, the city, could say, you may not pitch a tent and sleep in this location or that location, but you would have to identify alternate locations where they could sleep or pitch a tent or stay or essentially habitate.
So it's still pending.
Still pending.
Thank you.
So I guess I was wrong when I said I had nothing to add, Mr. Mayor.
Well, 1 minute.
We could do number 9 if you like, Mr. Mayor, and then come back to 8.
Okay. Number 9, regular business and ordinance of the City Council of the City of Oroville related to the adoption of a military equipment use policy. First reading, adding to Chapter 9, Section 9.25.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. What you have before you is the result of Assembly Bill 481. It requires local municipalities to adopt an ordinance and have a policy within our municipal code and our police department for the use of military equipment within that organization. Now, to be clear with everybody, we are not at the police department acquiring new equipment, getting new equipment sent here, soliciting new equipment from the military or anything like that. What this is this is an inventory of the things that currently already exist there. It includes ammunition, rifles, munitions, just different things like that.
Thanks.
No tanks. I mean, I thought it would be fun that next time the military train goes through town to get on Facebook and go, oh, good, our new stuff has arrived. But I didn't think that, I don't want to alarm the community. I just thought it would entertain me. But that is not what we're doing here. What we're doing here is we are introducing this. This is not the public hearing. It's just an introduction for the council to give you time to consider all of this. It's a list of the equipment that we do have within the police department. It is available in the agenda packet to all of the public to see. It does also contain the ordinance that will go into the municipal code under 9.25. And it also has the policy for the police department for the use of those things. This AB 481 requires that this comes back every year and it's re-reported to the council, so the council is aware of the things that are in inventory and gives the council some oversight of those things. So what we're asking you to do at this time is just to review this policy, provide any direction or any changes that you would like to see to the ordinance or any changes to the policy. And we can also answer any questions you may have regarding the things that are currently in inventory, if you have those. If not, then what we're asking you to do is to waive the first reading and introduce this by title only and direct us to bring back the public hearing at the next council meeting.
Madam Clerk, do we have any comments from the public on this item?
Mr. Mayor, I do have one speaker, the cameraman.
Good evening again, Oroville City Council. Just briefly, I'm glad we're going to review and look at this policy. Again, not to repeat everything, but Mr. Groen said, military-grade equipment, I mean, it's like the wording. It's kind of silly the way it's worded because, I mean, hell, if the Army takes a pistol and it's good enough to use for them, well, then I consider that military grade. But what they mean is like, basic stuff you think the SWAT team uses, People like to distinguish, tear gas, that's SWAT, that's low-level SWAT grade, material. The Army comes in with the real grenades and whatnot. Yeah, but tear gas, as defined in the penal code, is a gas weapon that's military grade. So, that's why things are labeled as such. I'm glad we're able to see what our police department has in that department. I think we should all know what our police department has in regards to, military grade equipment, because remember, ladies and gentlemen, at the end of the day, our tax dollars is what paid to have this equipment. So we should have the right to know what equipment is being used and, policies regarding that. Pretty much that's it, and just thanks, but no tanks.
Mr. Mayor, that is the only public speaker on this item.
Councilmember Pittman?
No, that was last.
Is there anyone from this dais that has any comments? Having none, looking for a motion to waive the first reading and introduce by title only ordinance number 1865.
So moved.
Second.
Motion carries with 7 yeses and 0 nos.
With that, we will open the public hearing up at 5:19 p.m. We have one item for public hearing, item number 8, the first reading of an ordinance related to zoning code amendment ZC 2106, proposed revision of Oroville Municipal Code section 17.12.020 relating to fence, walls, and screening standards.
Mayor and council members, we have our Assistant Planner Connor Musler here via Zoom to present this staff report to you.
Yes, good evening, Mayor Reynolds and council members. Connor Musler, Assistant Planner. This item is the proposed revision to the Oroville Municipal Code pertaining to the city's regulations of fences, walls, and screening. The city's current fence regulations can be found in OMC section 17.12.020, and they outline the requirements for the placement, height, and design of fences within the city. When reviewing this code section, staff realized that there were inconsistencies with other sections of the municipal code, necessary changes to protect the general health, safety, and public welfare of the city, and room to provide greater clarity on fence placement and height regulations. The first key change to note is the inconsistencies with the adopted building code were removed. The draft ordinance set 7 feet as the maximum height, with anything higher requiring a building permit for residential and non-residential properties. Another change is the maximum allowed height in the front yard. Currently, the city's fence ordinance as adopted allows a solid fence up to 6 feet in the front yard, provided that it is set back at least 5 feet from the property line and the setback area landscaped. This can result in properties being surrounded by a tall, solid fence, creating a potential public safety issue for first responders who cannot see who or what may be behind the fence or a clear way to access the property. To address this, the draft code sets 42 inches as a maximum height within the front setback area, and any fence over 42 inches must be constructed outside of the required front setback area or at the point equal to the primary building's front facade, whichever is less. This allows for the fence to be behind or equal to the building, so first responders, the public, they're able to see into the property and know what may be there. At the October 28th Planning Commission meeting, the commission recommended that the draft code also include a maximum height of 42 inches anywhere in the front yard of a house within the downtown historic overlay. This addition is in red underlined on page 176 of your packet. This change was made because certain properties in the downtown historic overlay are quite larger than the zoning, the minimum standards. They don't quite fit in since they're much older than the city's development standards. So this would prevent any tall fences within the front yard. The draft fence ordinance then returned to the Planning Commission on January 27th, where staff gave a presentation on the changes and further discussion occurred. Following the January 27th meeting, 2 additional changes were made. These changes are in green underline on page 172 through 175 of the packet. The first revision was to the height of fences allowed in the site distance area. This site distance area is the area at intersections that has been determined as necessary to remain free and clear of obstructions, so as not to obstruct the view of drivers, pedestrians, and cyclists. The current fence ordinance allows fences in the site distance area up to a maximum height of 30 inches. The draft change to the fence ordinance would allow fences up to 42 inches, provided that a 50% transparency requirement is met to maintain intersection visibility. Because it is critical to maintain adequate intersection visibility and the highly variable nature of site distance areas, the increased height up to 42 inches would require the submittal of a development review permit for review administratively by planning staff to ensure that transparency is met and a safety issue is not created with the increased height. The last change made was the inclusion of the Planning Commission, acting as the Historic Advisory Commission, in the review of fences exceeding 7 feet in height around historic areas, designated landmarks, museums, and parks within the downtown historic overlay. The Planning Commission's action shall only be advisory for fences that require the approval of the City Council. Staff recommends approval of the ordinance. And if there's any questions, I'm here to answer them.
Madam Clerk, do we have any questions from the public on this item?
Mr. Mayor, I have one speaker on this item, Bill Spear.
Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, I was looking over the fence ordinance, and I can see a reason why a lot of people in Thermalito don't want to become part of the city, because it seems like you want to make ordinances over everything. As I drive downtown and I look at some of the people that live down here, their yards are real small, and the issues that they have down here with the homeless. If I think if somebody, already has a small yard and they want to put their fence all the way to the sidewalk, I think they should be able to. I think the city shouldn't be able to tell them how high it could be. I mean, you can have, the ordinance that we have has been working. We don't have to make it lower so people can just walk over it. As for on corners, you have to, when you approach a corner, there's trees, there's cars, there's already things obstructing it. I think it's, you need to leave room for the people who own their properties to have some say-so in what kind of fence they want for their security. The 5 foot setback does not seem like a very good policy. It's like for what? For parking shopping carts, or when the homeless issue and we have people camping on the sidewalk, it gives them more room for their area. I think for people's security, and it is important for security for the fire and the police department, but what about the residents that live there? If they want to have a little bit taller fence, I think they should be able to have one. And it shouldn't have to set back. I think you're going a little too crazy on the ordinances. We're a constitutional republic. You don't need the city telling us every single thing. Leave room, let the property owner have a little say on where they want their fence and how high they want it. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, that is the only speaker on this item.
Councilmember Smith.
Yeah. Mr. Connor, is he still there?
Yes.
I'm here, yes.
Very good. So when it comes to the development of a review permit, which you're not using the term building permit, so there are two different animals. Obviously, when someone pulls a building permit, that's also reported to the county, and subsequently you receive an additional tax assessment because that property's value is increased. Our current fence ordinance doesn't call for that. That means I can build a beautiful fence and it doesn't change my property value as far as the county is concerned, and so therefore I don't receive that change in my tax bill. Would this development review permit have a impact similar to a building permit? I mean, what kind of maybe help me digest that a little bit?
This would be for the site distance area, that development review application.
But is that reported to the county like a building permit, and then then I get that subsequent tax bill, that supplemental bill, if anybody's ever developed a property or pulled a building permit?
The answer, no. This is not a permit process. This is just a review of what you're doing.
Okay, so that's a good thing, because we don't want to, I'm trying to beautify my yard, and there's some things I think we should be able to do without having any kind of tax change, where we're now being charged a higher rate. And then as to this 5 foot setback, I was going to Google map parts of our town just for grins, because I know there's a lot of homes with fences around them. Some parts of town more so than others, and a lot of them right up to the sidewalk. So what about grandfathering? I mean, I would assume that we're not going to do that, but is there a place in the ordinance where it says that this is all new fences, but existing fences are as is? Is there any language like that?
So that was a topic of discussion at our last planning commission meeting regarding fences that were already existing. Essentially that boiled down to, if the fence is not in compliance with the code when it was erected, so in this case, if someone has a 6 foot tall fence right up against the sidewalk, that didn't comply with the code as it's already adopted. So code enforcement or city staff can go in there and initiate a case against the property owner to get them to bring their fence into compliance now with this new ordinance. If an individual's house met all the requirements of the code, they had it 5 feet back, it was landscaped in front, it's not obstructing the site distance areas for anything over 42 inches, then that would be allowed to stay as is until it's voluntarily demolished or along those lines, where it would fit into our non-conforming uses and structures section of our city code.
So all fences that are within 5 feet or 60 inches, whichever comes first.
If I could,
So you're saying they would have to be removed?
No, Councilman Smith, anything that is 6 foot tall that is right against the sidewalk that was non-conforming with the code at the time would have to be removed. You can put in, if you adopt this code, and it goes into effect hypothetically tomorrow, you can put in a 42-inch fence right against the sidewalk. I mean, it's only when you get to 6 feet tall, and that becomes a side obstruction is what the issue is with that you have to have the 5 or the 42 or whatever, the 5 foot setback. I mean, so I hope that adds some clarity.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I was just somehow missing that part of it. 'Cause I would be we'd have a lot of fences coming out or a lot of very angry residents.
Yes.
Mr. Barone, I think we're just going over this because of discrepancies in the code. We're not setting new code, right? Because I'm a contractor, I remember it to always be the 42 inches.
Correct.
And because of visibility when you're backing out of a driveway.
I think that what we're doing is we're aligning the code with the building code and doing code cleanup here is what Mr. Musler is doing with this. I mean, this is a very common code that you would see in all cities. I mean, because, cities do not want large fences in front of homes. I mean, it's unattractive. I mean, to be really honest. And then it also is a side obstruction at intersections. So, that's what it comes down to. And that's, like I say, this is a very common thing. This is code cleanup. This isn't a new code that we're introducing.
I think the code was 20 feet back from back of sidewalk. It could be no higher than 42 inches, and then it could go up to 6 feet because of the view obstruction in the driveways.
That's correct.
Is it? I got one right. Vice Mayor Thompson.
Thank you for the clarification. So there is, correct me if I'm wrong, so from what I'm hearing from this discussion, what is because it sounded like there was a bunch of changes to the code. Is that not correct?
There are changes to the fence code as currently adopted. So our fence code as adopted, some of it doesn't align with the building code. Other parts of it don't align with our general plan design guidelines, things like that. So most of this is to maintain consistency between all of our documents that we have adopted. So those are the changes within the fence ordinance.
So if somebody wants a 6-foot fence on their front yard, they can't at all? Is that what you're saying?
With the adoption of this ordinance, the 6-foot tall fence would not be allowed unless it's outside of that setback area. So for an R1 zone, 15 feet outside of that area, everything inside has to be 42 inches or at the point equal to the primary building's facade. That part was added in at the planning or at the Development Review Committee meeting because some properties, again, they don't comply to the development standards as they apply to the zoning district. So some houses may encroach within that setback because they were built, pre-adoption of our zoning ordinance. So what this would do would allow, fences to be constructed up against the building in that case.
So with this, we're looking at, I have this paper for the lot home fence. It says 6 foot tall around the lot home. Would that be out of compliance?
Because it is a park or zoned public quasi, it is within compliance. Those zoning areas can go up to 7 feet before it needs design review or planning commission or historic advisory.
So for
commission
me,
review.
it's hypocritical that the city can put up a 6-foot fence, but residents can't.
Well, a park is something that should be secured, and it has hard closures of dusk to dawn. And so that's the intent of those zones, to have that tall of a fence.
No, I hear you, and I totally understand and respect that, and that's why I completely understand and respect a homeowner who also wants to protect their home, especially during in the downtown district where I lived downtown for a little while and didn't always feel secure in my kids playing in the front yard. So I am more on the lines of, like with what Pastor Spear said about if somebody, we have our city already. The city's been around here for a long time. And it's not like we have walled, communities. So I am more for the sake of if somebody has property that they bought and they want to secure it with a fence, I think they should have the right to secure it with a fence.
And that's where if the fence goes out or above and beyond what the ordinance states, that they can submit to design review committee for a special permit for that fence.
Yeah, and that's the same thing goes along the lines if somebody buys a property and then they have to, they want to trim a tree, one of their own trees that they water, then they have to come down and ask permission to do that. And unless, I'm for our historical trees and all that stuff to having, but, where's the line of, what color somebody can paint their house? There's some cities that are really, stringent upon exactly how they want their community to look, and that's not the direction that I want for Oroville. So I'm at this point, what I'm hearing, I'm against this ordinance.
If I could just add a couple of things. Number one, we're only talking about, and Connor, correct me if I'm wrong, the situation you're talking about is only fences within 5 feet of the sidewalk, right? And if someone wants to put a 6-foot fence like this, remember, any fence that goes around a park, you have to approve.
Right.
If someone wants to put up this fence at their house, they would have to go to the design review committee and just say, hey, I want to put this up. I can tell you, that would get approved every day of the week. Every day of the week. So there's nothing additional that I take some umbrage with the term hypocritical, because it's actually less onerous for a property owner to put up that fence than it is for the city to put up that fence.
So I'm still, because
I get your point. What I'm-
we manage our parks, those are our property.
Yep.
And so as owners, then we approve those fences. And
Sure.
As homeowners, again, I'm not for the city going in a direction where, I think it's St. Helena or Healdsburg, one of those cities I lived around, they just kept going, And so I'm here, I think it's fine as is. If somebody wants to build a 6-foot wood fence, on their property line, I think that they have the right to do so.
Yeah, the one issue that I will tell you where you may find, the reason why I think most cities have the 5-foot distance is, I think, for one of liability for those who are walking along the sidewalk. If I'm walking along the sidewalk and there's a 6-foot, I'll use you can't see through the fence, solid wood fence that's up against the sidewalk. If you're pulling out of a driveway and you run someone over, not only are you getting sued, the city's gonna get sued as well. Because and I think that's the reason why most cities have adopted that 5-foot standard.
Another, excuse me, this is Wes Irvin. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Another reason for that is in many cities and most cities is that there is a 10-foot easement there for public utilities that includes the sidewalk plus additional space. And oftentimes, if there's a fence covering that, then that's a problem if they have to go in and work on that part of the utility easement.
Now, getting back to my point, one of the things I would say, again, I'm speculating a little bit, although probably not very much, but if you wanted to have something, you could put it formally in the code that someone could build a fence that can be seen through 6 foot tall up against, and I'll use option C, right? Like that fence. If you want to make it so that fence is okay, hard write that into the code. But that a fence that you can't see through, a solid fence, can't be up against the sidewalk. You see what I'm saying? You've got options here to work with. If that troubles you from a property rights standpoint, and I get exactly what you're saying, I do. From a property rights standpoint, as someone who represents an agency who amazingly enough received a citation from a different agency on trimming trees, not cutting them down, but trimming trees. I think there's sometimes it's like, okay, where I get your point. At what point do you as a property owner get to say, I'm going to control my property?
And for how long Oroville's been around?
Yeah.
How many times have the scenario that you're saying about somebody backing and hitting somebody and then we being sued? how many times has that happened in the time that Oracle's been around?
Yeah, probably never, but I'm not sure you've ever allowed 6-foot fences right on the sidewalk.
It's always been this way.
It's always been 42.
42 inches.
So if you want to increase it to 6 feet, make it something like this where it's visible through it, so you don't have a
From my
a
understanding,
visual
it was-
obstruction.
It was always, if 42 for solid, and it could be see-through, up to 6 feet. That's what it is, isn't it?
I think it was always 42.
2 inches.
42 total?
I think so.
And I also heard that he said that, even if somebody wanted to put a 6-foot fence next to their house, it isn't even on the thing, still has to be low. Is that what we're talking about here? Because he did mention.
If it's on the property line, so kind of a distinction between an inline, houses on both sides of your property, you can put your fence right on your property line. That's okay up to 7 feet without a building permit. When you start getting into corner parcels, things like that, you really, bring into question the site distance area for intersections, as Wes had mentioned, the utility easements that may be within that area. So, but for most cases, it could be right on the property line for interior lots.
On page 189 of your package, there is a sketch, a drawing that very, very nicely clarifies the standard rules that we have for where the fence can be 42 inches and where it can be 6 or 7 feet.
182.
I built a lot
And
of
Connor
fences
has-
in a lot of cities, and it's always been, we build 6 foot along the property line, on the sides and in the back, but in the front, 20 feet back from the, property line, it has to be 42 inches or lower for visibility. That's everywhere. And you can build, higher walls if you want to with a use permit, but over 6 feet, they have to be engineered.
I'm still not hearing and I know we got lots of stuff going, but I'm still not satisfied on what exactly is changing it. I mean, I'm hearing that it's changing, and then I'm hearing that it's staying the same. So if it's staying the same, I'm all in favor of adopting it for my vote. But if we're changing it and we're putting more restrictions on our homeowners, I'm not in favor of it.
Mr. Mesler, can I have you just highlight a few of those specific changes?
Yeah. So it goes both ways. There are some things that we're making more lenient for homeowners. For example, that site distance area, they would be allowed to increase that. So right now they can only do 30 inches within the corner parcel or the corner of their property. With this new one, they'd be able to increase that to 42 inches. So that's making things a little bit more leeway for homeowners. Part of it, maybe for some it becomes more restrictive where now the height anywhere in the front yard for a property, for example, in a downtown historic overlay, can only be 42 inches. That was the recommendation of our planning commission following discussion for multiple owners in the downtown area, was that they wanted to see into the properties. A lot of times these are historic homes and then they get covered up by a tall fence. So that's a change where maybe it becomes more restrictive for certain property owners. Right now, you can have a 6 foot tall fence in your front yard. Again, we're calling into question that 5 foot tall setback or 5 foot setback that has to be landscaped. Under this new ordinance, you cannot have a 6 foot tall fence within your front yard. 42 inches would be the maximum to maintain visibility within. So those are some of the changes that make things a little easier, may make things a little harder for homeowners.
So for the adding from 30 to 32 or 30?
From 30.
From that one, I'm for. The other ones, if we can just exclude those from the update, then great. As far as my voice is. The downtown district saying that in your front yard completely, whether it's 5 foot back or level with your house, that it can't be 6 foot, I'm against that. Again, downtown, there's a lot of crime, and so making more visibility for people who are walking by to potentially see, something that somebody has in their backyard, I'm not in favor of that. I think that
Vice Mayor Thompson, I think on the reverse side of that, though, if we had 6-foot fences lining the front yards of all of our streets, there's also a safety factor that is eliminated there as well. So say there's an intruder on somebody's front porch and the neighbor doesn't have the opportunity to see that intruder and report it. So there's both sides of the fence,
Sure.
so to speak, that we can look at here.
I understand
from
that's
this
a kind of a slippery slope argument, but here the city's been around for a long time, and we don't necessarily, it's not like tomorrow, if we don't adopt this, everybody's gonna build, walls around their houses. That we've been in this community for a long time, and people love their homes, and, but again, to further restrict an area that has a lot of crime, I'm not for that.
Mr. Vice Mayor, I think we hear your concerns on this, and I think that probably at this time what we should do is take this back to the Planning Commission with your concerns and have them rework this and see if we can bring that back at a later time, because you're absolutely correct. There is no crisis or emergency that we get this done today.
Councilmember Pittman?
Yeah, to staff, just for clarity, and just because I know the public sees this particular building, but the Department of Motor Vehicles building at Fifth and Mitchell, there's a pretty substantial 6-foot fence there. Why is that allowed?
So that's the distinction that you start running into between different land uses. They're a public agency, properties owned by the state, so the state, will regulate how they're going to put up a fence over there to secure that site. So that's when the different land uses, who owns that, what's the agency, who reviews that. So that's most likely the case where the DMV has that. It's a state-owned facility, so they put in that fence.
Just wanted the public to understand that. Thank you.
Councilmember Smith?
Yeah, I'm inclined to go along with Vice Mayor Thompson on this. I think it would be good for additional review. I think, I'm inclined to look for balance between public safety, which I think there would be obviously fences, I say obvious to some anyway, maybe not to all, but that there may be some places where 6-foot fences would be inappropriate and be, a hazard to public safety. So again, it comes back to that balance of public safety for all and personal property rights. And I'm not quite sure without more review if this particular these changes get us there. So I'd be inclined to like more time also just to review what it is and process there's a lot of numbers in here and a lot of factors. So I think we just need more time to process it.
So is it the consensus of this council that we tabled this item?
Yes.
For me, for sure.
For me.
Well, it wouldn't be tabled, it would be sent back to the Planning Commission,
Okay. All right.
if that's the pleasure of the council.
It sounds like it is. If everyone has spoke who wished to speak.
Are there any speakers on this, Jackie?
Not anymore.
Send it back to the Planning Commission, please, for clarification. All right. With that, we will close the public hearing at 5:48. Going back to regular business, item number 10, North Start Proposal for Marketing Services.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. What you have before you tonight for your consideration is a proposal presentation from North Star Marketing. About 42 days ago, 6 weeks ago, we put out an RFP for marketing services for the city of Oroville. We had one response that came from North Star Proposal, or North Star Marketing. North Star Marketing has had Mr. William Ketchum join us this evening, and he will be presenting his proposal to you, Council.
All right, thank you. Mayor Reynolds, members of the council, thanks for the time on the agenda tonight. We're North Star Place Branding and Marketing. Bottom line, we help communities compete for the future they want. And often that is through attracting jobs or investment, economic development. Often it's attracting new residents. In your case, your RFP spoke to your desire to attract more visitors. Oroville has an incredible experience for visitors, some rich history, some great sites, the lake, the downtown, so many assets that you want to help more people understand and more people come and bring investment and expenditure into your community. I've got a brief presentation that sort of highlights the process and how this all works and how it's worked for some others, including some in California. And I'm going to share a screen here and just tell me if you see that.
Yes.
Okay. We're the first to tell you that we think branding has a branding problem, and that is that most folks associate community branding and marketing with a logo and a slogan. And yes, we do great logos, and we think we can bring the story of Oroville to life through some incredible visuals, but really what branding is about is inspiring actions and behaviors, unifying your residents around a future direction, and importantly, attracting those visitors to experience Oroville. So yes, there is a logo and a slogan, but it's bigger than that. It's a story and an invitation for people to experience your community. As I mentioned, we're in the business of helping communities reach their preferred futures. These are some of the folks we've worked with around the country, and including in California. Our focus, Council, is small and medium-sized communities. That's what we do. We create brands and marketing programs for smaller communities. We think our greatest advantage to you is that we are not local. We bring outside perspective. We come in and learn your community. We listen and learn from you, but we also bring outside perspective, and sometimes that can be really helpful. Sometimes we don't see what's right in front of us. The other advantage to our national footprint is that we know what other communities are doing around the state and around the country, so we can help be sure that you're different from them, and that's the name of the game. We're proud of the diversity of our team in many ways, age, ethnicity, perspectives, a great, bright group across all different functions, from project management to brand strategy to creative development, research, all of the disciplines under one roof. We're also excited to be able to help you over what I believe is a 3-year program to market Oroville. We take a very balanced approach that stands on these 3 pillars. This first one is critical, that we engage your residents. We heard a lot tonight about your citizens, your residents being heard, and that's the core of our program. Is we do a lot of dialogue in the community with focus groups and surveys, and a good research process that helps us uncover what your DNA is, what drives Oroville, what its true essence is. Also, we work very carefully with key stakeholders like you all and other community leaders to make certain that they're all aware of what's happening and that we're bringing them along through the process. We're not going to surprise them at the back end with a big ta-da moment. We're going to make them a part of the process and bring them through the process with us. And then certainly what you're buying is unique creativity and activation possibilities for Oroville. So how do we actually put this brand to life to drive the results you're after? This is our process. I won't go through it in super detail. It is in our proposal that you might have in your packet. You can see it's shaped something like an hourglass. At the neck of that hourglass is the DNA and strategy formation. Think of it as the blueprint for the house we're going to build together. The house being the brand, but the blueprint is in that DNA. It allows all of us to decide in a single statement what Oroville stands for and what its proposition to the world is in terms of a great place to visit, to live, to do business, or experience. We started the beginning of that hourglass with that stakeholder and community education and engagement. We go through a lot of research inside the community, but also outside of your community. So we get some perceptions from afar. Then we move into that DNA strategy, then finally into the brand and creative development, and then to marketing planning, where we determine brand action ideas for bringing your brand to life. I think the most important thing we can stress is that we spend time in your community doing just what we're doing here. We're listening to your people. We're letting them share their perspectives on what Oroville is all about. We live by these three words. What is authentic, distinct, and ownable about Oroville? That's the mission. If we're not authentic, your people will reject it. If it's not distinct, the marketplace won't care about it. And if it's not ownable, it won't be valuable to you. We see so much in Oroville. It's just a fantastic place, from the downtown, out to Table Mountain and the lake, and so many cultural and festival types of activities. It's an amazing experience. I think we see enormous potential for storytelling to attract folks to come experience your community. Wanted to share briefly with you how this has worked for others. Just down the road to your southeast is Placer County. So Placer County is a really strange shape. It's a very wide county. It spans from the Sacramento Valley all the way over to Lake Tahoe. So they have a very diverse set of experiences. They engaged us to help put all those pieces together to tell a singular story. Here's what their DNA statement looks like. For those who want to breathe easy amidst breathtaking beauty, Placer County, from the Sacramento Valley to the Sierra Nevada along I-80, is where California reaches up to Lake Tahoe, and outdoor adventure reaches every interest in every season. So your senses and connections are heightened. Now you can guess from this that they have quite an outdoor experience, and that's the case for you all as well. But how did this drive their branding? Well, it came to this, their branding solution, Visit Placer, Life at its Peak. And you can see some of the materials there. You can see those diversity of experiences, from street fairs to festivals, just like you have, endurance racing, rafting, wine and ale trails, and of course Tahoe, and the boating and skiing opportunities over there. And you can see here how the branding takes hold throughout the community at trailheads. Also working with partners who might have attractions like Quarry Park to form partnerships so that the branding can support their efforts to attract people. Here's a small community in southwest Minnesota, Marshall, quite remote, but a wonderful little place that has built itself on the agricultural economy, and cultivating the best in us is their branding. The brand was so well loved by the community, they even created a pale ale at the local Brow Brothers Brewery. So that's a real sign of success, is when the community really endorses it. Up in Fargo, North Dakota, they used to try to tell people it was warm, it wasn't so cold. And that's just not true. We helped them to embrace their truth, that they're kind of a quirky community, and they are indeed very cold, and that they should embrace that and run with it. And you can see how their Fargo North of Normal branding has worked out, and it's been a real success for their visitation efforts. A very different kind of community than Oroville, but just an example of how we help them take a position in the marketplace and really own it. And then Lodi, over in the wine country, had some big competitors in Napa and Sonoma, and we knew we couldn't compete with the big guys, but what we had in Lodi was a more intimate experience where you could really get to the farms and get to know the growers. And so the positioning became behind the wine. So come have a more intimate and enriching experience in a smaller wine country marketplace. So I want to now talk about the deliverables that we propose for your community. First of all, that community engagement, comprehensive research will gather perceptions inside and outside the city. Those will be fully documented in charts, graphs, conclusions, implications. That becomes a great tool for your planners and strategic planning efforts in other ways beyond branding. Then we will form your destination DNA and your marketplace positioning strategy, how we think you can stand alone in the marketplace. And then, of course, the creative part, the brand identity, the messaging, the narrative, the story of Oroville, the deliverables like a brand standards guideline, and all the tools that your team and we would need to market your community going forward. And then importantly, the roadmap. So the marketing activation planning, ideas, and implementation guidance, all within a final report. We like to say that these are not the kind of reports that sit on a shelf. We're here to drive action with you. So they're very actionable ideas that your team and we can assist in putting to work right away. So that is the depth of, or a summary of the depth of the deliverables. Results are important. We look forward, should this work go forward, to defining specific objectives that you want to achieve. These are some clients around the country and how they have decided to measure success against the effort, but we want to be accountable to your goals and talk further about that. I'll wrap up and just saying why we feel like we're a fit for the opportunity. We are strategists first. We are a creative agency by calling, but strategy is what moves the needle. We are proud to have some awards that we've been given. The 3CMA has named us Brand of the Year twice in the last 5 years. We speak at the ICMA. We've been featured on the cover of City and County magazine. Some of your staff may read that. Some of you may read that. We are a full service organization with in-house integrated professionals. We're here to be a brand consultancy and planner, strategic planner for you, but also to be a resource down the road to help you implement. We've built some good case studies over the years. Some of those are in your packet or in our RFP response that prove the successes we've created for communities. And we're always very driven because it is our specialization to keep reinventing what's next in place branding and marketing. And that was all I had to share, and I would be glad to answer any questions about our proposal.
Do we have any questions from the public on this item?
Mr. Mayor, I do not have any public speakers on this item.
Do we have any questions from the dais? Vice Mayor Thompson.
Yeah, I just want to speak on the importance of doing, whether it's with this company or a different company, just the importance of this. I also used to live in Sonoma, and I know you mentioned Sonoma being a big dog or big guy, but the reality is that Sonoma was a cow town for many years, full of bars and nothing, and they rebranded themselves and is now a absolute destination. I had friends just visit there because of the marketing and the way that the city has just kind of rebranded. I don't think Oroville necessarily needs to rebrand ourselves, because I think we have some rich history that we just need to emphasize that has been not necessarily told well. So I think this is a great option for our community.
Councilmember Riggs.
Thank you. I just wanted to say thank you guys for taking the time for this presentation. I, for one, am very encouraged by it. I think that one thing that's really unique about this company is that they really do strategic planning and evaluation to make sure that we capture our true community and that we're able to overcome obstacles that are impeding our economic growth and hindering our own quality of life. I see this less as like a marketing proposal, but more as a research and economic development contract. And the outcomes, again, he said, aren't just fancy logos, taglines, and websites, but instead community pride, unified vision, improved quality of life, and the right kind of economic growth. We have amazing departments, city departments, and organizations such as the Chamber, Explore Butte County, and many others who are working tirelessly to promote our community and create positive messaging around Oroville. And I believe that this company would be successful at working alongside those organizations to bolster their tools and their talking points and really create that unified messaging that we have everything to be known as an amazing community. And we've just lacked the voice behind that. And I think that this is a great opportunity for us to define Oroville by what we all know is true, that Oroville's a strong community with a lot of opportunity and a lot of personality and very rich history, that we get the best of California weather without the politics, high cost of living, and traffic oftentimes, and that we are a community where dreams are still possible, that American dream is still possible. So I really do believe that we need this kind of professional place attachment research and laser-focused strategy in order to get it right. Oroville and the messaging about Oroville has been told for so long in such a negative light that I believe that we need to convince our own residents that Oroville is an amazing place to live. And I believe that this type of contract or this type of process would really help us do that and would equip. Again, I'll say again, our organizations like the Chamber and like Explore Butte County are amazing. I really believe that this can help us tidy everything up, unify that messaging, and create a better opportunity for us to further that marketing and work that those organizations are already doing. Thank you.
Councilmember Smith. Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I think we all are in agreement that Oroville is certainly a unique place. I mean, I moved here because I love Oroville. I moved back here because I love Oroville. And there are so many elements, and I think in part of that presentation, talking about, you know, the best kept secret in Northern California, I think was in your materials, one of the opening volleys there. Going back to the RFP, it was kind of a, pardon the pun, shotgun request, and so this particular firm is one firm that has responded, but there are, you know, many elements that can be brought to the table to assist a city or a community to message and to brand. I think, you know, certainly that requires a lot of discussion. I'm on a little bit of a different perspective, and I'll just take a moment to share that. Explore Butte County, EBC, which is funded, they receive hundreds of thousands of dollars in tax funding from Oroville. And they do an amazing job in the development of content that really puts a great foot forward for our community already. And largely what in reviewing the presentation, I see duplication. So I'm a little concerned about spending dollars in duplicating branding and messaging that even can be potentially conflicting. Now, I know that there would be collaborative work there, but so I'm a little concerned that we're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars in Oroville right now for amazing branding. When I review the Explore Butte County webpage and the videos, you know, one of the presentations that was put forth, we have no videos of Oroville. Oh, yes, we do. In fact, downtown has amazing, high-quality marketing videos already produced. There already is a firm that has been procured from outside our area that helps develop these deliverables and the messaging for our community. And so what I'm personally looking for is an organization that can come and help elevate how that information is put out, whether it's geofencing or other market tools to develop, or not to develop. I think the message is pretty close in development. I think we would need more community input, and that's a whole nother conversation. But when it comes to messaging or putting out the content that's already been highly developed, I think that looking for firms that can help us with geofencing or collaborating that material and pushing out our message, I think would be better dollars spent. But essentially, as I digested the presentation, I know that there's going to be more conversation from the presenter on this, but as I digest the material, I see a lot of, at least up front in the front load, a lot of duplication, and I'm not for that. I'm for collaboration, in particular with the hundreds of, and just to go back, I'm repeating myself, but we have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars as a community in the development and the marketing of our area already, and the messaging. It's already there. And EBC is happy to share that content. It doesn't come with a price tag. We've already paid for it. So essentially, we would need someone to help with perhaps reorganizing that, retooling that. And I think in my conversation with Mr. Legron was, well, I don't see it on TV. Well, that's just because we're not buying TV space. But this firm's not going, they don't do that. If we want it on Northern California television and pushing out some of the content that's already been developed, then, you know, that's a different conversation potentially. Or, you know, that's, again, that could be something that could be further developed with perhaps another marketing firm that's even more local, in my opinion. I would like to see more response, more opportunity to digest this. I just don't think jumping into the firm across on the East Coast to duplicate a lot of stuff that's already been done is in my view, the best the best spend for our dollars, in particular our tax dollars. And so I would like to have further review. I'm not ready to say, yeah, let's go for it. Conceptually, totally agree. We can do so much more. I'm just not sure if this is the answer to that.
Councilmember Pittman.
Yeah, thank you. You know, every city has a responsibility to sell itself, and every city has that need to sell itself. And I took a lesson from Detroit. I spent some time in Detroit, and I saw that city fall apart. And one of the big reasons for them to fall apart is everybody left. 800,000 people of the population left the city because they didn't have a reason to be there. It's a little extreme, but I still will never forget walking the streets of that town and seeing everybody gone. You know, a brand new 3,200 population high school for students opened or built and then never used, just boarded up. So I'm a little extreme, but that at the same time though, we have to sell this community. And if we hire this firm, I think this is our best shot at pitching what are the attributes and reaching out to the other part of the world that we don't know about. We're kind of in a bubble here in California, and I'm gonna tell you about the bubble. People are leaving this state. And I think we as a community have to find a reason for them to stay here. And that's a tough job. I can tell you, even parts of my family are packing up and leaving this state right now. So we need to sell this community in great detail, in great communication, and we've got to reach out to the different ways people are grabbing the communication. TV is kind of blah. The newspaper it used to be the record of our community. It's got a different position today. The other media is Facebook, Twitter, all those kind of things. That's kind of where the public is leaning toward. I'm not suggesting those, but those are the new ideas that we have to grab onto. And I think having a firm from some distance might be of a great advantage to this community. I mean, how many communities have the essential, and I'm looking forward to sharing the attributes. One example is we have the real estate for new population. In 2006, we had a map with 9,000 available lots on it. We haven't filled those lots up yet. We have the infrastructure and water, which is a key thing to grow. And that's going to be a big sign for all the communities. Can you afford it? Can you provide enough water for your community to grow? We actually can. The other thing that I would strongly suggest is, you know, how many times do you have a community that has 5 lakes within a 5-mile perimeter and a river runs through it? Now, all of us know that because we live here, but do we sell that? We don't sell it. We need to sell that item, and marketing firm like this, I think, is exactly what we need to have and put in place as soon as possible, because the trend is to leave California, and I would like to see all of our families and our friends find this as a place to be, and an attractive recruitment of that. So I'm in favor of this proposal, just simply that.
Councilmember Riggs.
Thank you. I just wanted to provide the presenter an opportunity to respond to those questions regarding how do you navigate duplicating efforts, efforts that are already in place. How do you navigate making sure that we're not recreating the wheel, but building upon it?
Right. Thank you. I'd like that chance. And Councilman Smith, I appreciate your comments and concerns. You know, regional collaboration is the future of economic development. And that is the principle that we bring to the table and would live by in working for Oroville in concert with Butte County. So we would not create redundancy or competition, but I would use the word complementary to their efforts. I think that is how we envision Oroville standing on its own within Butte County, but also being a regional partner to their efforts. And so, you know, I think that another opportunity is for the community to think beyond the goals of tourism. And I think the RFP spoke to tourism, but building a stronger brand and identity for Oroville can also serve residential retention, so retaining residents, attracting new residents, but also investment and economic development. One of the things we do a lot of is municipal branding. So I see this as sort of a combined municipal and destination brand. So it can serve a lot of objectives, including being a complementary partner to Butte County. We can give you many cases tomorrow, if that's convenient, of where we're working for jurisdictions within larger jurisdictions that also market. So we could be very certain not to create duplication. Also, finally, we are full service. We can do geofencing. I think what we've proposed is to create the story and build the platform in year one, and then years 2 and 3, we can be a marketing partner for you. We're a full service organization with media planning and buying and all those types of activation efforts that you might need. But anyway, I think the larger message is this is about regional collaboration, but how does Oroville take its rightful piece of the pie with all the assets that it has? And we wouldn't overinvest in assets that already exist through the county efforts, but build more upon those to serve the goals of residential retention, residential growth, and economic development, as well as tourism. So, thanks.
Thank you. And then I just wanted to ask Ms. Nevers if you could share the process behind this RFP that I know that Mr. Smith referred to as a shotgun process. In my perspective, you guys did quite a bit of diligent outreach to other marketing firms, right?
I did not do the outreach. Our PIO, Miss Daly, did the outreach, but she did reach out to several firms. And then the RFP was flown for, I believe, 30 days. And then Mr. Legron might be able to add more to the process. That's the extent of my familiarity with it.
I know that Mr. Legron and I have been talking about the storytelling of Oroville since before I was elected. Attending the League of California City Conference really led additional efforts in our conversations and frequency in our conversation about this. So in my perspective, this has been well-intentioned. It also speaks to not just tourism, but that community ownership, investment, things like that, not just tourism.
In working with Explore Butte County, I've had this conversation with our subcommittee specific to Oroville, and they are in favor of this. Also working with Ms. De Niro, who is the president of Explore Butte County, she is also in favor of this endeavor.
Right.
So,
thank you. In my conversations with them as well, they have expressed that they are doing their best to promote Oroville, and they are doing a very good job. I very much appreciate their efforts. However, some unified vision of how we want to portray Oroville would be beneficial in that effort. Thank you.
Councilmember Smith.
Yeah. No, it was shotgun in that it was a plethora of different things we were looking for input from firms to give input. In other words, kind of, here's a broad, 30,000 foot, right? And then you tell us how you can come to the table and bring these deliverables and how you can elevate and rebrand and all of that. But it was rather a wide berth.
I was imagining shotgun, like shotgun wedding, quick.
Oh, no.
Not shotgun wide.
Yeah. And help us here.
How communication is important.
Help us here. And so, in that term. And so I'm speaking specifically to the tourism dynamic and the fact, so I went and I reviewed the websites that you had in your material. And so I'm looking at, and it's heavily weighted on the tourism. And I'm sitting there scratching my head thinking, my goodness, we're spending a ton of money in Oroville, maybe off the radar for some, but nevertheless, quality content. And so I thought, well, why would we want to spend a ton of money as a community on things that are already developed? Now, if you can collaborate with EBC and they can share that content and you can elevate that and use that and remarket it for Oroville, I would have no problem with that. And in particular, when you bring in economic development, I think that really that's what I think the story of tourism and an area with recreation, millions of dollars. Let's just get rid of the hundreds of thousands. We spend millions of dollars in Oroville. Trust me, this is kind of my area, my zone. Millions of dollars when it comes to pushing out the message, come to recreate in Oroville. So I think development of the economic piece, or, Oroville is an amazing place to come live and work and raise your family because we have 5 lakes and a river running through it. And so, when you get off work, you can go 5 minutes down the street and jump in the river and, cool off or whatever. I mean, those are some, things to brand. And so when it comes to economics, those types of pieces, I would be certainly in favor of that. And if your firm can then develop that in utilizing content that's already been developed, then I could get behind this. But initially, just to be, up front, I think I'm repeating myself again, but in the initial presentation, I saw heavily weighted on a tourism piece, and that's what threw the flag up for me. And that's why I'm just, challenging, because I think that there a lot of that's already happened. It's just that we haven't done a good job utilizing that. And that maybe you can help us with that.
And if I could just weigh in on this, I look at this as an economic development tool for the city more so than tourism, because my question, if we're spending millions of dollars on that, is it working? I mean, because I don't want to be negative or nothing, but if we're spending millions of dollars to get people here, I don't see the return on that investment, if that's what we're doing. So we have to do something different, I think, that has to go outside of that box. And I'm not trying to be critical. I'm just not seeing maybe I just don't see it, is where it could be. I mean, that very well could be the issue.
Can I be blunt on that?
Sure.
I'm going to go out and take a risk. I'm from the Bay Area originally, and I was heavy into boating, water skiing, youth groups, that type of thing. I never came to Oroville even though my family lived up here for decades. I never came to Lake Oroville. And why is that? I've never even been in that lake. And I owned a 22.5-foot Chris Craft, one of many. Loved all of that. Because the lake it's difficult. It's all constantly fluctuating. It's just not a lot of fun when it comes to certain types of boating activities. If you're a houseboater, man, it's awesome. It's a beautiful scene. But we have these other, as Councilman Pitton was pointing out, other bodies of water much closer to town that can be utilized and elevated. But I guess the point is that state parks, DWR, other agencies spend beautiful websites selling our community, selling all these recreational pieces. And you're absolutely right. You know what the average stay is at Loafer Creek? And now, when I managed resorts, okay? And if I produced these results, I'd have been fired. 10% on average occupancy. It's terrible. And so they want to spend more money on that element to drive something that it's not, in my opinion, real drivable, because it is what it is, right? It's like putting a ring on a pig's snout. It's still a pig, right? So I'm kind of going, yeah, that's a visual. But I think there's just so much more that we can do with our community, with the town, with the river, with the lakes and all of that. But I think we'd be remiss to fail to recognize that, no, there are a lot of dollars spent on promoting recreation and promoting tourism, and it has not been super effective. And there's a lot, I could sit here and talk to you for hours about this, but economic development, reining it in, and how can we best promote and push Oroville forward. I'm down with that. If you can bring more of that element, I certainly can support this. Sure. Because this and we are the best kept secret in the North State, absolutely. Because while the rest of the state was looking for water because all their lakes were empty, we still had these bodies that were full to the top. People could fish and ski and recreate. And that's a precious thing, especially in these times with issues with water, right? And Oroville does have the water, absolutely. But anyway, I can just labor on forever on this.
I love your passion about it. You have a question? I'm ready for a recommendation.
Can I just make just a couple more comments? I've been thinking about this all weekend, and I really got to get this out. I agree with everything that Councilman Smith is saying. I agree with everything that everyone is saying. I believe that there has been great effort put into this. And I think collaboration is extremely important, and I think we have to ensure that nothing is lost, nothing is forgotten, and it's all included. If these things exist, we just have to figure out how to put all of this together and get those things out there. As far as economic development, I think we have a vibrant downtown. We have an enthusiastic business owners in the downtown area who have, went as far as creating their own bid, going through those processes, trying to get people into the downtown, constantly making improvements, doing their, First Friday events, things like that, sponsoring different things. So they have the energy, they have the desire. We have a beautiful downtown. I think a lot of people don't know that. I mean, we have a clean downtown. I mean, we have a advantage over a lot of other local communities that people just don't know about. I think it's incumbent upon us and part of our job to get those people here to enjoy that, because the more that they're here, the more dollars they spend in our downtown area, the wider the experience is going to be. Oroville has an opportunity, I think, to not only just have retail, but have an experience when you come to Oroville, because it is nice to walk downtown. Don and I were just walking down there the other day, taking care of some business. I mean, and when we do those things and we showcase ourselves and we're positive about our community, I think large retailers are going to notice us as well. I mean, because those things will be out there. These tools can be used to recruit and get those larger retailers here. So I'm looking at it from that perspective of how do we use it there? How do we coordinate, collaborate? And then how do we push our message? And yes, I want to see a TV commercial.
All right.
Not with me in it.
Councilmember Smith, you're.
Yeah. Just one more additional comment. I know I've taken up a lot of time, but I kind of feel like we're going to go in this direction. So you have your work cut out for you, and we're going to watch you for you to succeed where others have presented results that are less than extraordinary. And so we're going to look to you to do extraordinary things with these dollars for our community to promote it. Again, tying the economic development piece to it would be important to me. I don't know if it's important to tie that into to the motion.
Yeah,
I think
I've
you
got
want to
it
do. I
ready.
think you have it in your. Okay,
Yeah, I'm
so
just waiting for you guys.
but
I'd
I
also
certainly
like the AC to be turned up. It's so hot
it
in
is a
here,
little
guys.
warm in here. But
Whatever way it needs to go.
so no pressure, but really no. We've spent as a community millions and millions of dollars in tourism with less than stellar results. And this is your big. You know what? If you're successful and Oroville turns a huge corner, then man, we'll be the best marketing piece for your firm in a couple of years. So.
Well, we have every incentive to perform. We live by reputation, and every assignment has to be better than the last. So I accept the challenge.
Councilmember Pittman.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to give a little perspective to knowing our own backyard. I'm going to guess probably 50% of Chico's never been on Lake Oroville. And I'll just throw that out there because that's my experience. The other thing that happened is my sister's birthday was Saturday, and my Susan says, I'm going to go shopping for her. We're going to Orland. How many of you have been to Orland and gone shopping? It's a wonderful experience. I was shocked. So what I'm saying is we have competition in our immediate area. And if we don't jump on the ability to market our own selves, our competition's going to beat us up. Just that simple. And I think that Oroville striking out like this is a great idea. It's certainly worthwhile, and it'd be a benefit to the community. So, and I tell you what, I'm going back to Orland just to have lunch. It was just crazy, but that's where our market area is. The same thing's happening downtown as Mr. LeGrone said. You know, the union's doing a wonderful job. They're attracting people from long distances to here, and we need to capitalize on that now and don't let it falter. So, go ahead with your motion.
I would like to make a motion to, you don't even know what I want to say.
Yes.
To direct staff to pursue a contract with North Star Place Branding with greater emphasis on economic development. Also, as a side note, I believe that monies from the American Rescue Plan can be used for this, and it's not coming out of our general fund.
This would come from the American Rescue Plan dollars as a way to help our businesses emerge from the COVID pandemic.
Great. Thank you.
It is an allowed use.
It is. I
And
know
that is in the general fund?
I'll second that.
Second and I.
Our general fund. Thank you.
Motion carries with 7 yeses and 0 nos.
Also, thank you for turning the AC on.
Yes. Moving on to item number 11.
Oh, gosh, can that be carried over?
Sank Park perimeter fence options for selection to prepare request for proposal.
More fences.
Good evening, Mayor Reynolds and council members. We're here to revisit the issue of the perimeter fence around Sank Park. This has been an extended issue, one, because we had to wait for funding approval from state parks. And two, we took the opportunity to seek the comments from our park commission because it's a park and from our historic advisory commission because it falls within our historic downtown overlay. So with that, I have a quick presentation for you. If the thing will work. Just turn, is it on? Is the switch side on? No, thank you. So our existing fence, it's not working, there we go. Our current fencing around Sank Park is a mishmash of fencing. We have chain link fencing on the west and southern side of the park, and we have wooden fencing with chicken wire on the north and east side of the park. And so it doesn't really fall within our historic district parameters anyways, but it does fall within the typical 42-inch height for a fence around a perimeter. And then you'll see that our gates are a bit of a mishmash as well. We have some chain link gates, and then we have a wrought iron gate for the man gate on the east side of the park. The same with the front of Sank Park. We have the man gate is also a wrought iron gate. Each corner dons a wooden post with decorative finials on top. And so after taking this information to our park commission, what they have proposed is option A for you. And this came out of comments from a member of the audience who had this sketch or rendering of the lot home and Sank Park from history that shows a 5 foot, or excuse me, this one shows a 42-inch tall fence with simple wrought iron pickets, white corner posts with corner caps and or post caps and finials, but there's also a curb underneath that fence. What they proposed out of this was a 5 foot tall white fence to replicate the rendering with the simple clean line pickets and the corner posts and finials. From the Historic Advisory Commission, what they proposed is option B. And this would be a 5 foot tall matte gray fence to replicate that of a Gothic revival home with relatively simple and narrow pickets, very similar to option A, both being 5 feet tall, but one being white and the other one being matte gray. So this option B would don a little more ornate corner posts with caps and finials, and an inset gate at the Montgomery Street entrance, the man gate, would inset a foot or two to make it appear a little more grand and as the main entrance to the park. This one would not have a curb as you see in the picture though. This would just be straight pickets to the ground line at 5 feet tall. Now I've thrown in a curveball in option C. I came across this fence one day and I thought it looked rather nice. And this one could, I believe, could be, if my clicker would work, at a 6 foot height is what we were originally proposing, but still not have that prison feel because it dons those soft arched tops. And so we could have the nice substantial corner post with caps and finials, but still have a nice 6 foot tall fence to secure this park in the evening hours. So you have 3 options here. We can begin by sweeping any off the table that you'd like.
Can
or
I
if
ask
you have any
one
questions.
question? What is a finial?
A finial is the top piece.
Okay.
It's a decorative piece. Sometimes they're acorn shaped, sometimes they're round.
I just wanted to prove I was the most ignorant person in the room, so I figured I'd ask the
Yeah.
question.
So before the council starts its discussion, I want to know if there's any comments from the public on this item.
Mr. Mayor, I do have two speakers. I have Kay Castro and Bobby O'Reilly. So Kay Castro.
Good evening again. This is probably one time in history that the first two options are so wonderfully perfect for all of the goals. A aesthetically pleasing fence, one that will be able to be locked securely, tall enough at 5 feet that it would take a little effort to throw all your shopping cart over there. Clear so that you can see if there's anyone in the park. I have a couple of concerns, however. The second option B, as presented, did have that concrete structure below it. So now we're hearing that that's not really going to be part of it, but we liked option B, even from the Park Commission, because it gave us an opportunity to hide some of the electrical, hide some of the wiring so that we could have lights in the finials or close to the finials. No, option B. Yes, so it was proposed to us looking like that. So to change that concept now from the option A and option B, which we all found, both from the Park Commission and the Planning Commission, Historic Advisory Committee, to be acceptable, that's a huge change. Also, we have spent months on this at the Park Commission and the Historic Advisory Commission. Tonight is the first time we saw option C. And I feel like we've talked to the community, we've passed along the other pictures as were presented to us, and that if those are all changed tonight, no, I don't want to go back to the drawing board, but I'd like whatever is presented in the packet and presented to the public and presented to the commissions to be what's presented to you. Thank you.
Bobby O'Reilly.
Good evening, council. Thank you. It's been a while since I've been in front of you. We did go through great length of discussing the fencing around St. Park. A couple of key things I'd like to key some of you in on. I'm sure you've already noticed them or thought of them in your mind, but just to bring them out to public is we need to make sure that whatever is put there, that it is hard to climb over. Nothing with center rails that people can put a foot on, used to climb over, nothing with anything they can grab onto or minimal that they can grab onto to get over easily. It may not be the best way to say it, but sharp fences at the top are going to keep somebody from wanting to go over it. If we have smooth cut finishes at the top, they're not going to care if they go over it or not. Out of the Park Commission, we recommend 5 foot. That was a happy medium from the citizens that neighbor the park and the community that had input, or the community members that had input on the subject. Nobody really liked 6 foot except me, and any shorter than 5 foot was kind of too short and defeated the purpose of having security at the facility. Right now, with everything in peril in California as it is, it's hard to uphold the laws, uphold the ordinances that we have in place. Our police department can't keep up with keeping people out of our parks, enforcing the ordinances that we have for them, just because of circumstances that we face daily here. A fence of this nature is going to assist in not only aesthetically pleasing looks, but the security of our parks. It can be closed at night, it can be locked, it can be enforced. If anybody's beyond it, there's no doubt that they are beyond a locked gate. So as far as the colors go, I personally am not too concerned whether it be white, black, or matte. I really like the matte, and even if we chose, or if you chose option A, but use the advice of option B with a inset entranceway, would be, personally for me, would be aesthetically appeasing too. Just security, no easy access to get over. It needs to look the part of secure, and that is my, oh, and lighting. As long as it meets those, that is my request for the fencing there. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, that is the last of the public speakers on item 11.
Councilmember Goodson.
Good.
Oh, I didn't, no. Just get rid of me.
I had a question in regards to option C, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I didn't see a gate entrance. And what would that look like?
The gate entrance would also have the arches on it as well, but that hasn't been designed just yet. So really what we're looking for is some direction so that we can put it out for RFP so that our fence designers have a point of direction to take when they are designing the fence and submitting a proposal. And really the intent with option C specifically was that if we could reach that 6-foot height, but still have that softer visual effect on that fence, but reaching that goal of 6 feet. If this body does not want to go with that 6-foot height, we can sweep that option off the table.
And just one more question. Curious, option B. I see, for me, that's a nice finish at the bottom, but it would detract from seeing the foliage, flower bed. But I was just curious why that bottom portion, you feel it best to just have spikes all the way down.
Just because this would add an added substantial cost for the footing and to construct, it would typically be a block wall underneath with a stucco coating or a concrete smear of sorts over the top.
Don, if I could add something, that the curbing that you're talking about on the bottom is just a step stool for people to climb over, and it's a barrier for people to sleep behind, so.
All right,
I agree
thank you.
completely with not having that.
Thank you for that insight. Appreciate that, Ron. That's all that I have.
Councilmember Smith.
Art is in the eyes of the beholder, right? I like option B. I like the matte gray. I think it looks stately. I think typically white, it looks good at first, but it can get kind of grungy quick. That would be my concern with that. A lot of maintenance to keep it looking sharp. Gray, can endure a lot more. It's just more tolerant to, aesthetic abuse, stains and that kind of thing. But I've listened to the part online and then in person, the Parks Commission painstakingly spend literally hours discussing this, and personally, out of respect to the Park Commission and the time that they put in this, I'm not prepared to make it. I think it needs to go. I mean, we can make a decision here tonight. Maybe we can, but that option C, just because they hadn't seen that, and I know they hadn't because I watched the meeting and I've been in the meeting, but they did spend a lot of time just mulling this thing over. And I maybe even a few more comments from them to this, but I could go with option B. I love the footing, but it just would be out of sort with cost. I mean, it would just be significant. It costs as much to build that footing as the whole fence probably, or near it anyway.
Well, in option B, within the packet on page 279, it does say no curb. So there was never intended to be a curb there. I just couldn't find another picture of a fence similar to this that didn't have a curb.
I mean, we all agree we need a fence around that to secure that asset, and we want something that's just, accents the property and that everyone can, appreciate. But I think that option B looks great. The whole thing comes back to 5 foot, 6 foot. I get the security element. I think 5 foot can certainly, 5 foot's legal for pool fencing, swimming pool security, I think 60 inches. So, I mean, it's sufficient for that purpose. I mean, I can go with the 5 foot, but I like option B. I like the gray. I'm good with that. I would just want the Parks Department not to feel slighted on this. that, just out of respect for them. And maybe they're okay. But anyway, that's my comments at this point.
Councilmember Pittman.
Thank you. I agree with Mr. Belser's comment that the curb just provides a stepping stone for someone to jump the fence. But I also look at the fact that, and I do like option B, but I would like to see where the metal fence comes to the ground level, a hard surface, so that we have a clean line for the landscapers to clean up, whether it's a brick or something, or a concrete curb that's just small enough to hold the landscaping in. Would be nice, because then it'll look nice versus having vegetation growing through the fence, that kind of thing. I did talk to a number of different fence installers, and their recommendation was to have pointed tops. Whatever you do, have pointed tops, because that's going to detract anybody from climbing it, which option B does do. And I'm fine with the color, and I think 5 foot's going to be adequate, just as long as we have a clean line under the fence that the landscapers can clean to.
Vice Mayor Thompson.
I think we're all saying the same thing. I'm for A or B, and I am against that curb.
Okay.
I'm going to go ahead and comment a little bit. I was thinking a lower curb, and it can be done with a curb machine. They actually have machines that I just watched them do a mile of it in Chico. And you can do it any height you want, and it's actually quite cost effective for that. And I do like option B, but I be the odd man out here, but I like the black color.
I like the black as well.
We thought the White House would pop in the background.
Yes, so do I. I was thinking maybe a 6 to 8 inch curb with a 5 foot steel fence with the pointed tops, because I don't think anybody's going to be in too big of a hurry to climb over that.
I believe that's a nice option.
I believe that 6-inch curb already exists on the west side of the lot home property, running along that side. As I went by today, I did notice that. So it's a small curb on that side, so we could probably mimic that around the rest of the.
That's what I was saying, to agree with Councilmember Pittman. It needs to be a definite edge for it to look nice. It needs to be able to be maintained and clean, rather than just open at the bottom, because we know that's going to be a constant thing with leaves and weeds and everything else. So I'm an advocate for a curb just lower.
Low.
No. Yep. So I'm hearing a 6-inch curb with a 5 foot.
6 to 8.
6 to 8. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, that's I think there's a consensus for B. It sounded like most of us were in line with that.
Okay.
The C, I don't, and I'm in agreement with it. Just popped up here. It just showed up. We haven't seen it, but that would not deter me from going over that fence at all.
Right. And more so, I threw that option in because I've been hearing like, oh, it looks like a prison. So I wanted to throw in an option that had a little softer top, still was an inviting perimeter fence, but yet still served the purpose of securing the perimeter of the property. But obviously, everybody is not for that option, so we will sweep it off the table.
So what is the consensus of this council? We have.
I agree with you on the curb. I think having a trim for trimming is a good idea.
Okay.
Councilmember Goodson.
I just have to say, so how low can we go? 6, 8, what's the standard here?
For the curb?
Yes.
Well, we don't have a standard specifically for this around a fence. Oh, for curbs in general, like around a parking lot perimeter?
Yes.
I would say a 6-inch would be a standard.
Okay, great. Can I just look at option A one more time?
Yes, you may.
Thank you. I mean, I'm sold on B, but, all right, thank you.
Then I have some extra rebar I can start making these.
So if I'm understanding what I'm hearing from the council, the consensus is a small curb around the perimeter with option B being that put out with an inset walkway, entranceway? Okay.
Sure.
So we will put that out.
We'll put that out for RFP. We'll get that prepared.
Yeah, that's important too. What color would you like?
I like black.
I like the gray. Oh.
I'm fine either way.
I think the gray looks primered and unfinished. I'm sorry.
So maybe even a satin black?
Hmm.
There you go.
Oh.
Okay.
All right. Satin.
I'm hearing oohs and ahs.
Really go with the charcoal.
Okay. I have my direction. Thank you, council.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the commission.
All right, moving on to, what's that? Do we want to use the restroom? Okay, let's take a 5-minute recess to use the restroom. Good idea. 5 minutes. Everybody in the restroom. Hey, I was looking for that.
No, there's
You
another
had it
one.
in your purse.
No.
Yeah. All right. 5 minutes turned into a little longer, but that's okay. I think we're all satisfied with the break. Thank you. I'm going to call order to the meeting. Moving on to item number 12 for regular business, advisory ballot measure regarding the contracting out of fire protection service for the city of Oroville.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. What you have before you tonight for your consideration is a request of Councilman Pittman at the last council meeting to have this item brought before the council. With that, I will turn this over to Councilman Pittman.
Thank you. Did we want to have public comment first or go right into council?
It's your presentation, sir, and then I
Okay.
think we'll have comment.
Thank you. One of the reasons I brought this up is we should take a lesson. Even before this contract started, we received notice of an increase of almost $500,000 added to the contract from the governor's office. And I'm not faulting the local personnel, that's just, they're following what their governor put in place, but to raise this contract by $500,000, we ought to take a lesson from that. That's the first increased cost. The other items that I'll mention before, as we've talked and discussed about, just as a reminder to council, that we'll be losing about 50 years plus of our training program that certified our fire personnel with the unique fire conditions of the Oroville community. As I look in the room, there's only two people I see, Mr. Buckout back there and myself, that have went through the fire department training program. That's 18 months of intensive study of our community in terms of every building in the community. You're required, you're tested on it. Fire hydrant locations, fire department connections, exits, public exits, and all those things that make the personnel here a wonderful service that is, I think, exceptional to what we've had. And it started way before me, and it continued, and it continues now that the personnel are trained to an 18-month standard. The other issue that comes about is none of the elected representatives of this council campaigned on this issue, changing the fire department to the state of California. In fact, if you look at the constitutional republic policy passed by this council demanding local control of services, then we have no credibility if we decide to turn over the second largest department in our city to the state of California. It kind of flies in conflict with that policy. We've also had some alternative proposals in this discussion, but the city, for the city fire department in terms of equipment and software and a number of things to improve staffing, and this council has turned those items down and rejected by this council. So consequently, I think it's valuable to the citizens of this community to make this decision. If you'll notice in the staff report, Mr. LeGrone prepared for fiscal 22-23, the contract would be roughly $4.8 million. If we kept Oroville Fire, as he states here, the fiscal 22-23 with some estimations of revenue for inflation and increased operating costs, the cost would be $4,243,676. So there's an increased cost to this proposal, roughly $600,000. So again, I have to ask, is this worthy of doing? It doesn't seem to be a financial benefit to us. The taxpayers, I think, should have a weigh-in on this particular decision, and especially when we're just maintaining existing services. We're not changing anything. That's my argument for this. The argument was kind of spurred on the fact that we received notice of a substantial increase in the contract that was proposed some time ago of the $500,000. Plus, I believe that their personnel, or the CAL FIRE personnel, are probably in contract negotiations for another pay raise currently. So we know, or we can predict the future, that the $500,000 now will be more before soon. And you can't predict when, because that's a negotiation process going on with the state and their personnel. So with that, I think it's reasonable to let the voters of this community decide how they want their tax dollars spent. It was not a part of any campaign in the previous situation. Came up as a new item. Some folks are scared of some of the issues been created. One of them was the binding arbitration that was approved by the city voters. I'm not scared of that at all. I don't know why people are. But that's in place. It doesn't go away. And if we were feared of that, then we should have went back to the voters and asked for that to be changed. But the voters did approve it, and I believe in 2004. I'm in disagreement with that. I didn't vote for it, but at the same time, it is in place. And if that's the problem, then we should have the voters remove that. So that's the issue that I present here. It's for this council to decide. The advisory vote would be added to the next election, and a delay of the startup would be moved forward to that date in November. That would, once we get the results of the election, the council could decide what to do then. So I just think it's that important that, a good portion of the city budget, the city taxpayer dollar, be spent by an advisory to the council, or to the council from the voters. And that's pretty simple. I sit up here as a representative and spending your dollar, and I have trouble spending your dollar any other way than to let us know how you want your dollar spent. Just that simple. That's all I have.
Madam Clerk, do we have any comments from the public on this item?
Mr. Mayor, I have 6 speakers. The first speaker is Michael Brown.
Good evening, Mayor Reynolds, members of the council. I think you started this investigation of your fire service officially in 2019. It went on long before that. We've watched Oroville Fire Department decline for decades. We're all well aware of that. We've watched El Medeo Fire suffer and become dismantled. But you as a legislative body have investigated thoroughly now since 2019. I've attended several meetings, and even last June came to a series of public hearings. I didn't see any opposition of consequence. And I think you've already made a decision. To throw it back to the public is going to politicize a question about how to enhance your fire service, not keep it the same, because the discussion has always been about the best way to improve the fire protection for a city that intends to grow. You've been diligent in exercising your responsibility. You've taken it seriously. You've used your authority well. You've inspected thoroughly. And if there is a cost increase, I guess that's new. But the way you describe it, Mr. Pittman, it sounds like it came out of Sacramento, so I'll suppose it has to do with benefits. Is that correct? I can assure you what will follow is the benefits for your own civic employees will also be affected. That's just the nature of how it goes. And I can tell you where it started. Probably started in Los Angeles City, and then Los Angeles County, then Sacramento. Your own firefighters are in the same union as CAL FIRE firefighters. They will indeed get the same benefits. The only difference is years from now, when your employees are retired, those that served in a different uniform won't be on your roster through PERS, and you will achieve a greater savings in the long term in an area that's already a concern to you. Before you, you have an opportunity through Mr. Pittman's recommendation, really, I think, to abdicate your role if you are a constitutional republic. You're the legislature. You've made a decision. You should press forward with it. You can't get out of your role to provide fire protection. That you can't abdicate, but throwing this decision back on the public after years and me having my insurance canceled by AAA is a bit much. I would just encourage you to stay the course and proceed with the contract until it no longer serves the city, and then fire CAL FIRE then. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Stephanie Irish.
Okay, so here we are again. And I believe last meeting, Mr. LeGrone told us that Oroville Fire Department would get an increase as well.
Inflation will affect everyone, so the cost will go up. This is outside of inflation, the CAL FIRE increase.
So all of the money that you discussed before will be more. Okay, so we're clear on that. This council has spent countless hours on the CAL FIRE contract, and Pittman is here to waste even more time, not to mention city money. Dragging your feet has cost you the discounts in the millions with the state. That's factual. You agreed to hire a consultant and agree with whatever the consultant said. That was approximately $25,000, and the council said that they would agree with whatever that person said. Now here we are again, wanting to spend thousands more to get it on the ballot. That is not free. You were elected as a council to read all the fine print and do what is best for the entire city. A consultant did read all the fine print, but yet Pittman can't accept that either. And it was his idea to start all of this. And for some reason, when he made the motion last time and Councilmember Hatley said, I'll second that, and City Administrator LeGrone says, what are you seconding? He said, whatever. So what does that tell us? This is a joke? You need to stop it. This is people's lives you're messing with. CAL FIRE is the way to go. The council has decided that. It has been countless hours, money, regardless. You need to take it seriously and do your duty, just as this gentleman said. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Bobby O'Reilly.
Thank you, council, once again for the opportunity. I am going to, on the contrary, not get up here and voice everything I so want to yell and scream out. We've heard what could be done, what should be done, what isn't being done. And with that, I would just like to say that I heard a comment earlier about insurance rates, and my understanding is that regardless if we remain with Oroville Fire or if we go with CAL FIRE, that insurance rates, that's not going to affect your insurance, whether they'll cover you or not. It has many other factors to deal with. However, with that said, myself, Mayor Reynolds, Councilmember Smith, and Councilmember Pittman have all sat on the same stage at one time, and it was when we were running for council, and we all had the same goal in mind of helping this city and not wanting to see a marijuana dispensary ordinance go in. And it was such a contentious matter that we, all four of us, sat on that stage yelling, sat at this podium yelling to the council sitting on that side, you need to hear the people, put it to a ballot. I've got recordings of each one of us. Put it to the people. If it's such a contentious matter, if it's such a big deal in our community, put it to the people. Let the people decide. So again, we're going to have fire service regardless which way we go. It's just a matter of who we're going to have the fire service through. I personally think that the city could invest the money they're going to spend on a contract with CAL FIRE and have a wonderful, robust, growing fire department. That's my opinion. You guys have made up your minds. You have done your research. And as each one of us that I mentioned have stated, if it's such a contentious matter that has so much money involved and has the people on both sides so agitated, as somebody who actually does pay a property tax within this city, I ask, just put it to the people. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Kay Castro.
Good evening again. I do agree with Mr. Brown that there has been a severe decline in the funding for our fire department. The city has gone through a very dry time, and now we have a very, very robust, strong time, regardless of COVID, with Measure U dollars for our public safety. So I'm wondering if we can blame the fire department for whatever it is we're blaming them for. I haven't heard exactly what we are blaming them for. We've been talking about money, and we've been talking about the bottom line dollars. You did your due diligence, and you spoke, and we listened. That changed. So now the public would like an opportunity again to even know that this is going on. A lot of people work and couldn't be here tonight. Well, although they could have by 7:15 if we'd known it was going to be 7:15. But they see the 4:30 and they can't come. They're working. So at the very, very least, I agree 100% it should be on a ballot and we can vote. I can say I've got these people saying this, and she can say she's got these people saying that. Neither of us, any of us, can pool all of our resources without some sort of a vote. The very, very, very least I'd expect of you is another couple of public hearings so that people know that that contract has already been increased. People know exactly the numbers. I've always been saying from the very beginning, I'm the numbers girl, I'm the numbers girl, I'm the public communication girl. And I agree. I think 9 people came and they asked 50 questions. Correct me if I'm wrong, but those public hearings were at that point, it's a done deal. Council's already made up their minds. We're not going to be able to change anything. The cost is about the same, okay? Those dynamics, those facts have changed. So at the very least, I'd like to promote 1 or 2 public hearings, not at 10 in the morning, and not at times when people can attend. I'm not sure what that looks like, but I think that we could come up with 2 or 3 times that we could get the majority of the population here, and that might help to have all of us come to more of a consensus. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Lorraine Christensen.
Thank you, Council. I'm Lorraine. I felt pretty strongly about this situation. We went through the last 2 elections, voting in council members that we felt could stop with the consultants, stop stringing everything along, passing the buck, and make decisions for our community. You as council members, in going over these contracts, had the benefit of a lawyer to walk you through them, of the highest forms of information you can get. As a person in the public, I attended as many meetings as we could. What we couldn't attend in person, we watched on video. As much as we try to inform ourselves, I'm sure there's things you all know that we don't know. And I would say, as a taxpayer, I do not want this to go to a vote of the people. 99.9% of people didn't come to the hearings, the meetings you had, the public situations. There were more people on the podium to answer questions than were sitting in the audience. And it's your job. You have all the benefit. All people want to know is that when they call, a fire department's going to show up at their house. They're not going to say, oh, is this Oroville Fire Department or is this CAL FIRE? and we've entrusted that to you. There's those on this council, Mr. O'Reilly brought up the marijuana thing. When you were in the majority, those of you that are still on this council, you voted to deny the public a vote. You did not want a public about an issue that was hot fired. The whole state theater was filled. The community was totally invested. And I'm just saying, as a taxpayer, I look at my 1% tax that goes out with inflation. I look at a stupid 5% utility tax I'm paying on my rising costs. And to have 5, 10,000, it was in the report, go to a ballot measure to appease somebody's ego or to keep this thing going is terribly upsetting to me as a taxpayer. And I'm speaking personally for myself. I trust you to have studied the thing, and as taxpayers, we trust you to make the decisions. There were not the majority of Oroville people. More hearings aren't going to bring more people. It's time for Oroville to move forward for the protection of our city. Thank you.
Our last speaker is Steve Christensen.
Mayor, council, staff, it's my understanding that it's been passed. It should go forward as scheduled, as planned. Nothing should be delayed. And if those who oppose it, Counselor, don't they have the right to put forward a referendum if they don't like what's passed and have the public speak on it in that manner? The proposition, I understand, was to have this put on the ballot. If it's left as is and it's carried forward, completed as scheduled, if they still want to object to it, can't they have a referendum initiation to have it put on the ballot so the public can speak after the fact, after it's established? No, there's public initiated referendums also. So that's a different avenue other than putting a advisory thing on the ballot, right? So it can go forward as scheduled, and if they still object, they have another avenue. Thank you.
Councilmember Hatley.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I do take this serious. I've always taken this serious. This department has been here for over 100 years, and we're just, the way I look at this is a little different. It's unfortunate. Every time we get into a discussion about this, we seem to lose our civility with each other, and we start yelling and screaming at each other and calling each other names and stuff, and it just takes away from everything that we're trying to do here. And so as I think about this, I think that, you know, I was trying to put this in some perspective about this going on the ballot for the people. And this is what I came up with. To me, this is a lot like having a family member on life support. And the family's gathered there, and we and the family would be the citizens of this community, all the citizens that are in this community. And the patient is going to be the fire department. And so we're saying that, and this council would set as a doctor. Now, do you want us to make that decision, walk in and take and unplug your loved one from the life support? If you do, if you want us to make that decision, okay, but to me, if that's my loved one laying there, I want to make that decision. My family's going to make that decision. And the family is the city, the citizens of this community. So to me, I think that, you know, what's the harm of putting it on the ballot? You haven't lost anything. Not one thing have you lost. If it's going to go, it's going to go. If it's not, it's not. And so once you give it up, you'll hear people say, yeah, we were elected to do this, you know, and we should take this responsibility. Okay, yeah, we were, but This is a huge responsibility. We're giving up a complete, large department that's been in this city for 100 years. And so, to me, that's not something that we should take lightly. That's not something anyone should take lightly. And when we do, if it's a direction and this goes out, and once the fire department's gone, you'll hear people tell you, oh, we'll get it back if we don't like it. If it doesn't work out, we'll just get them back. Guess again. Guess again. You won't have the money to get it back. And second of all, who are you going to get? Because if I am an employee, and I've been with this city and this department for so many years, and all of a sudden, I'm no longer a city employee. You can call me whatever you want, but I do not work for the city of Oroville. I will be a state employee. We will have absolutely zero input on whether they get a raise, whether they don't get a raise. And we heard it said that, will our firefighters get a raise? Well, certainly. Certainly they will. But we will control that, not the state. We won't have any input into that. If the state comes in and says, here's what it's going to be this year, whether it's $1 or $5 million, you're going to pay it. Or they're going to say, well, if you can't, we're going to reduce services. Because they're going to have to, because it's dollars and cents, and they're not going to do it for free. Nor should they. So as long as you think about that, you have absolutely no control over what that price is going to be. You just will not have it. And that's my whole thought on this. For me to say, you know, yeah, boy, we should just do this and no matter what. No, this is the life support. Let the people of this community say, yeah, you know what, it's time to pull the plug, or no, it's not. And let them decide that. And that's all I have.
Mr. Mayor, we inadvertently had another speaker card that got mixed in that did not get called.
Annie Terry.
Sir?
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I appreciate the opportunity to address the city council tonight. I want to start off by saying as soon as I'm done talking, I'm leaving because my daughter's childcare is going to want to go home, and I didn't know this was going to drag on so long before we got to this, or I would have left already. If this had happened an hour and a half ago, I would have left an hour and a half ago. I want to also start off by saying I no longer have a dog in the show. So my husband is no longer a volunteer at El Medeo or involved in El Medeo Fire Department. So I'm not saying this because I'm married. I was married to Steve Terry. I'm saying this because this is what I believe. I believe that the reason the Oroville Fire Department struggled and languished for so long was because of the fact that funding was low. And when funding is low, that means staffing is low and services are low. And I think that there's nothing wrong with the people running Oroville Fire Department or the staffing or any of that. I think it's the economic times that we lived in. And I think the fact that we now have these Measure U dollars, I think that they should be used to beef up what we already have, because that makes a lot more sense to me than reinventing the wheel and going with something else completely different. What you do is you fix what you already have, and then if you have to, you replace it. We've just avoided the whole concept of fixing what we have. We'll just do away with it. And I think that's a bad decision. I think it's a bad financial decision. I think it's a bad business decision. And I think the people need to have a vote. I mean, Stephanie and Mike can go out and campaign, and Kay and Bobby and whoever else can go out and campaign to try to get people to vote on their behalf for what they believe in. But I don't see what's wrong with allowing the people to vote for this. I mean, I know that I would vote, not because necessarily that I believe in this, because I believe that it's my civic duty to vote. I believe that all of us should have a voice. I think every one of you should have a voice. I had a voice in electing every one of you. Everybody in this room had that same voice. I had opinions about, marijuana was brought up. I had opinions about that. I have opinion about a lot of things, and I could spend a long time telling you my opinions. But the fact of the matter is, I'm entitled to my opinions, and voting is the only way besides standing here in front of you that it's going to get out there. So I'd like to vote on it. Thank you.
Councilmember Pittman.
Thank you. I just want to bring back a couple points that I had jotted down here I didn't mention, but you got to remember too that this is only a personnel and dispatch services contract. The city still has the obligation of paying for the fire apparatus, the facilities, the maintenance, and all future equipment costs. So we're still on the hook for almost everything in the department to run and operate. The other issue that was mentioned is that I'm not aware of any discounts that were offered in this whole contract process. The contract timetable was set by CAL FIRE, it wasn't set by us, so I don't know where the comment about discounts came up. The other thing that I'll bring forward, and it was a COVID meeting where we couldn't allow all the people to come inside the chambers, but we had roughly 60 people standing outside against this proposal that first night that we brought this up, and then that also brought forth a petition. And I realize it was a simple petition, but there was 300 signatures of people saying they didn't want this to happen. And this council just disregarded that entire group of people, period. Just frankly disregarded those folks. So once they're disregarded once, twice, they just won't come back again. The other issue that's brought up about PERS, I've looked at every contract city with the CAL FIRE contract, and every one of them are paying PERS, even though they don't have fire personnel in their inventory. Every city still pays your PERS. It doesn't go away. It doesn't go away. You can look up Gridley, you can look up Paradise, they're still paying PERS for fire personnel. It's just that simple. So let's be clear on the facts. Our PERS obligation doesn't go away. It stays with us. You can contact any one of those cities, you can find out how much they're paying. And it just continues. So there's a lot of information that's available here. You can go on the web and go to CalPERS and look it up for yourself. Just look up actuarial for every city that has a contract with CAL FIRE, and you'll see that they're paying their PERS. And then the issue with Elmadale, this council was presented a proposal from Elmadale to join forces and to do something today to help out. This council rejected that proposal. They didn't even want to talk to Elmadale, which I find unacceptable. So now we're at this situation. We had an agency offering money to do a partnership, and that's pretty rare, and this council still rejected that. I don't even know where that was going to go, but at least it was a proposal to have some discussions, and this council didn't even want to have the discussion, so there we are. That's all I have.
Holy cow. Okay. Give me a minute here. Regroup. So, you know what? Yeah, go ahead, Chrissy. I gotta take a second here.
The CalPERS comment just made me, well, it surprised me. But I just want to clarify, and Ruth, you are free to correct me if I misrepresent this, and please do. That yes, those cities are still paying CalPERS for their past accumulated CalPERS liability. They are no longer paying CalPERS on their current firefighters who are now state employees, and those state employees are now the responsibility of the state's CalPERS. Sure. However, we still have to pay what we owe for their time that they served with us. Yes. Okay, thanks. I'd hate to have got that wrong. Thank you.
And also another thing worth mentioning is that CalPERS is only expecting a 1% to 2% return this year after getting a 23% last year. So we will be seeing more unfunded liability, even though we did our pension bond. So yeah, we're going to see more.
Okay, Councilmember Smith. I think I'm ready here.
Mr. Mayor?
Sure, go ahead.
So, when I look at this complex topic, immediately my thought is to emergency professional services rendered to our public and the responsibility that as this council has to that. and finding the best way to provide the very best services. Historically, Oroville, for a small community of 20,000, using a round number, we have 3 separate departments. The fact is, CAL FIRE is already here. If you live north of the river and you live in the city of Oroville, you dial 911, most likely CAL FIRE is going to show up. The core of the town, it's OFD. South of town, El Medeo is supposed to show up. And so, again, I think already there's no debate as to declining services or quality of services. You can identify a lot of different reasons, funding, aging equipment. You can find a whole plethora of rationale. I know when El Medeo was in here pitching the agreement to come together with the city, there was a lot of discussion about the quality of service, a service rendered. They even at one point accused the city of deliberately not providing the same level of service to South Oroville as to the rest of the city, which I think many found somewhat offensive. And I would say very illegal, and there would be a lot of culpability. But nevertheless, the point is that the 2 agencies have struggled for decades. I've even had my own personal experiences with that. So moving forward, when you think about modernizing the city, modernizing the services, I ask myself who can bring the depth of service, who has tremendous resources above and beyond El Medeo or the city, and one agency rises to the top with that. So that becomes a big factor in my personal equation as to how I make those decisions. That they have the training, they have the resources, and the elephant in the room when it comes to funding is the whole north part of town. Because CAL FIRE has been servicing with the disparity of calls. They provide a lot more calls for service versus how much we reciprocate as a city. So going back to they do nothing for free, oh yes they have been. CAL FIRE could have been for some time billing the city, and they've been gracious. And they have been providing that service because they service a lot of the calls, and we do not reciprocate on the same level. So for an example, they run 1,000, we run 100 of CAL FIRE calls. So the disparity is 900. I'm just using numbers for illustration purposes. Don't hold me to those numbers. But, and so at some point, yeah, they have an obligation to the state. At some point, somebody in Sacramento is going to say, you need to start billing Oroville for those services. And so that potentially is a fiscal challenge that adds to the equation, and that's just a fact. And so with this relationship, to digress for a moment, one of the important elements to this working was our firefighters. And that is that they would have an opportunity to lateral over into CAL FIRE. And initially, the letter from the union was they opposed it. And I went over and I talked to them and I said, look, I'm a little bit conflicted at this because, the CAL FIRE is a much larger organization, a lot more upward mobility. If I was a young, aspiring firefighter, and I had a real dream to rise to the top in a large organization, I mean, CAL FIRE is beautiful. And then the package for retirement, and they have a life retirement for medical. The city doesn't offer that. I mean, what gives you? Help me out here. Talk to me. And they struggled with that. And then a couple of months later, a new letter came out from the same union saying, you know what, we have no opinion. And if you kind of go behind the scenes a little bit, what you find is that they liked what they saw. And they realized, you know what, this isn't a bad deal after all for a firefighter. And so, but that was an important element to this whole thing working out. So this, for me, it's a matter of bringing the best public safety services that we can bear as a community, as a city. You know, and you have old models. And you know, what worked yesteryear doesn't necessarily work into the future. You know, my point a while back was, you know, we have an apparatus in the Pioneer Museum that is over 100, I believe it's over 100 years old, and the engine was a horse. We don't use horses to fight fires anymore, as far as pulling the apparatuses, at least not in this state, I don't think, anyway. So, you know, the point is that things evolve. You know, the complexities of emergency services. You know, firefighters run mostly 80–90% of their calls are for, you know, accidents, you know, medical-related calls. And so you want that depth of training. You want the consistency of training. You want the consistency of that seamlessness across the board, command and control. And the fact is that if we have a major incident in Oroville, CAL FIRE is going to be the lead agency anyway. They're already here anyway. And so by folding those three agencies, assuming at some point if El Medeo, and that's, and we've kind of had this conversation early on, but that's, you know, in their, kind of in their world to make a decision as to what's going to happen with them moving forward. But we have an obligation to seek the best possible measures to provide the best level of service to the community. And times are evolving. Regionalization is a move that is going on right now in our state in doing what we're proposing with the CAL FIRE contract, in that there's multiple cities, organizations, counties folding in and using one agency to provide that service. You know, again, it comes back to command and control. And, you know, when seconds count, you know, for me, when I dial 911, God forbid, I want to wake up in the hospital not having a toe tag in the morgue. And seconds can make a big difference. So for me, a lot of the decision process goes to that. Cost is certainly a consideration. But when it comes to the vote, I think that, again, there's been a lot of public discourse on this, and it's just, I find it a little bit ironic that some of the folks that sit on this dais were opposed to, you know, a social issue like marijuana, which have huge social implications on our community. And there was a massive outpouring. I know with Pastor Steve Terry, he said, Councilman Smith, you have 300 emails in your inbox opposing the CAL FIRE contract. And I said, Pastor, here's my city laptop, you find them. They're not there. There's 10, and one of them's yours, and the other 9 are, you know, all of you that have a stake in firefighting. I just didn't see it. If there was a massive outpouring from our community, looking for, and even tonight, I thought, you know, tonight's going to be a kind of a tell. I just don't see it. I think at the end of the day, people don't care much about the patch on the shoulder. They just want the best service rendered. And for me, that's what I'm looking at. How can we provide the absolute best service for all of us at the end of the day? And then thinking about economic development, we had a wonderful presentation. Moving forward, there's also some dynamics to that. It gets into the weeds. I'm not going to go there, but the CAL FIRE relationship, providing that employment services, really helps us move forward and bring that consistency and seamlessness of service, training, all of that. I just think it's a huge plus. That's how I see it.
All right. Councilmember Smith.
Did I help you there?
Yes, you did. Thoughts? Thank you. Thank you. And, you know, I'm going to say something here that Mr. Legrone asked me about a year and a half ago. He said, what's the matter with you? I said, I don't know. He goes, you've been kind of grumpy. I said, yeah, have I? Sometimes it's hard to tell. And he said, yeah. He said, I think I know what the problem is. What's the problem? He said, you seen these people as leaders in the community that were good, and he wasn't being specific, but that you thought were good, wonderful people. And then you got in here and you seen what they were willing to do to get what they want. And it broke your heart. I said, you know, I think you got a handle on it. Willing to deceive, willing to mislead. Hey, you know, I'll bring up this petition with 300 signatures. I'll tell you what that petition said. They're going to shut down Oroville Fire Department. Do you want to be without a fire department? I would have signed that. You know why? Because I asked people, why did you sign that? And they said, well, they said they were taking away the fire department. We weren't going to have one. And so it's easy to take the same signatures and change a cover sheet with explaining things. I'm just saying that what you see is not always what it is. We were elected to make decisions up here. I, for one, am not afraid to do my job, and I'm willing to answer to you in any election. I don't have to go to consultants and things because we have experts on staff. I'm not going to spend your money like that. I heard just a minute ago from a council member about the marketing for the city that regional conglomeration is the future. It's the way to go. We have to regionalize in order to enhance service. I believe that. I believe that. And then I want you to look at this dais. There's a few of us that have only been here a few years. We did not create this problem, but there are some people that have been involved in this city for 30, 40 years. And that is the time frame where these problems have been created by degrading of service. Mr. Brown, I love it when you speak. You are so intelligent, sir. You are on point. And you are honest, sir. You are, and you have no skin in the game. You're just wired that way. You know, you can see it. We can see it. We've been given the facts. The campaign was to what we promised, this Measure U. We promised to increase your level of service for first responders with fire and police. We are doing that. We're doing that. And I'm going to tell you something. If CAL FIRE handed us a bill for the level of calls that they respond to, the 1,200 calls in the discrepancy that they answer for the city of Oroville, that would be around $800,000 a year. And that's not charging the extra stuff for the planes and things like that. That's just an average hourly manpower bill that they could have laid it on our desk anytime, but they didn't because they wanted to work with us. They wanted to work together. So you could paint the picture, and remember it's an election year. Political stuff is you're going to get people saying whatever they can to get you on their side or in their camp. I said before, I'm not worried about this seat. I have a very good life without this seat. I'm not looking for something to do. I'm worried about those seats. And I'm not going to leave you on the hook with an $80 million unfunded liability bill when we can do something about it. Just because I simply want to walk around and say, I was in charge of that. I don't care about being in charge. What I care about is representing you. And we have people that have their own personal narratives, interests, vendettas. Yeah, it was true. I started my campaign with a few different people that I supported, but I could see rather quickly that the behavior was not in line with my own. That's why the ties were cut. It wasn't because anyone was lying or misleading or anything else. It was behavior. And I for one, am I care what the public thinks about me as far as a father and a husband. As far as everything else, I'll let God judge me, but I'm certainly not going to let Facebook terrorists judge. So the CalPERS unfunded liability, I talked about that. What are we down to now, Ruth? 16 million or 15 million or? It was 80 when we came in here.
We were at 25 before we issued our pension obligation bonds, and so with that high investment return hitting in 2 years, we were unsure. I got an email, an update from our consultants that handled our pension bond. They said they thought we'd be fully funded in 2023. They were off a year. We won't be fully funded until 2024, but now we have this really low investment return that we will see in 2 years. So I don't believe we're ever going to have a year where it's gone. So all we did was transfer it over to bonds. We're going to get a new one every time they don't hit their.
Thank you, Ruth.
Sorry.
So anyway, the point is we're moving in the right direction. The level of service is very, very important. And I'll tell you something, when I first got elected, there was no Measure U money yet. It had not kicked in. We had spoke to the police department, asked them if they would consider a 10% decrease in salary and for 6 months, and then after 6 months we would. And when I say we, I mean our team. Asked them if they would take the 10% discount, and at the end of 6 months, when the Measure U money started coming in, if it came in as expected, which we were anticipating, then we would not only restore the 10%, but we would restore all of the discount monies that they had given and give a 3% increase in salary. And that was very agreeable with the police department. We went over to the fire department. They did not agree. They have a different union. They did not agree. So in my opinion, because we were, I think it was a 17% increase that was being demanded at the time. Somewhere, Mr. LeGrand?
I'm sorry, I don't recall.
So 17% increase, I think that is what was being demanded. We didn't have it. So I asked, what are our options? It was brought to me that the city had entertained an agreement with CAL FIRE for 30 years, something like that, back and forth. They had gotten to a certain point several times, and then the council, at the time, the fire department was very integrated with prominent families in town. It's not the case anymore. We have good firefighters, absolutely, but they're not from necessarily Oroville families that were integrated into the community. We have I believe we had 5 firefighters that were from Oroville, and the rest were from outlying areas, Auburn, Colusa, things like that. So what had happened before was when it got to a certain point, they knew that they needed to regionalize and for depth of service. And when they got to a certain point, then there would be a contentious group that would come in and put pressure on the council, and they would then whatever their situation was, then they would back off of it. Well, when we sat down, in fact, I asked Councilmember Pittman to be on my committee with me. It was he and I that were the committee. And we sat down with CAL FIRE, and the first conversation went something like this, to paraphrase. They said, we're looking out for our city. We don't really know what to do as far as negotiations with the fire department, so we're entertaining a proposal from you, or we'd like to. And they said, it was Chief David Hawks at the time, and he said, the city has asked CAL FIRE a few different times. It got to a certain point, and so we're really not, we don't want to waste our time or money anymore because we can't take the offer. We get a lot of time and money invested and then for political reasons or whatever, then the city backs out. Oh, wow, okay. Sorry to hear that. But me being new, not knowing, counting on Councilmember Pittman for the language. And I said, well, listen, if we come to an agreement, if we can come to terms, I won't back out. I will do what I said I would do. I promise you that. And he said, well, all right, what are your terms? Well, the first thing I want to know is, will you be able to hire all of our personnel? Will you be able to hire them at CAL FIRE? Because we don't want to leave anybody behind. He said, oh, you're lacking a lot of training. I said, oh, okay, what does that mean? He said, well, if that's what you want, we can provide the training, but we will hire them if that's what you want. Okay, great. Well, that would be like one of the #1 stipulations. Okay, all right. Well, what else? Well, would you be able to promise us that they would be able to stay in Oroville? Because you're a state agency, we wouldn't want people to be transferred somewhere where they wouldn't want to go. We can do that. We can promise it. We have the authority at this level to promise you that. Okay, great. Wow. If we get to the point where you hired them, would it be a lateral transfer for rank and salary or above? Because we don't want anybody to lose anything. It would. We might have to create some positions as far as, because yours don't really line up with ours, but we could do that to where nobody would lose. Okay, great. Well, let's talk about it then. And we started moving forward. That's true, COVID hit. It was tough. Then David Hawks retired. John Messina came in. Great guy to work with. Very professional. But at that time, I think what had happened is that old feeling of the old guard started getting the cold feet of, hey, this looks like it's going to happen. I'm out of here. And so I was a committee of one. So that's fine. So anyway, here we are today. We beat this thing to death. We've hired experts at the whim of council members. I was elected to do a job. I'm not afraid of what the people think. I'm representing what the people think, because I'm going to tell you what. Councilmember Pittman is well-known. His name is well-known. I'm well-known. My name is well-known. We both have a lot of friends. He could speak to somebody about this same exact issue and they'd be going, holy cow, what a tragedy. He could walk out of the room, I could walk in and talk to him and they'd be going, holy cow, that's the only way to go. So we really can't do that with personal conversations, because everybody that I talk to is all for it. Everybody that he talks to is completely against it. I'm in agreement. Councilmember Smith, with the emails, I had very few, and they were from the same people. There's a little group, and it was the same ones. I get it. But that's where we're at with that. Now, as we are today, I believe that the firefighters have received where their positions would be in CAL FIRE, and each one of them has gotten a raise. I believe the lowest was $500 a month, but most of them were at $2,500 a month, with the level of benefits significantly increased. So at this point, it wouldn't even matter if somebody said, let's not do it, but I would be going against my promise to somebody who held up every one of theirs. It wouldn't even matter if somebody said that, because we're not gonna have anybody left at Oroville Fire Department, because they're all going to CAL FIRE. Because it is a lot better entity, because this one has not been grown or invested in 40 years. So that's where I'm at. And I hope that you can see that for a long time, I didn't know. I thought, why does he say he doesn't understand the numbers? Why is it a $1.2 million increase? That doesn't make any sense. That's if El Medeo and everything else was on top there, but that's not what the numbers are. What the numbers actually are, we had to go with absolute worst case scenario. And I admire John Messina for telling us that he said, hey, I had to go with absolute worst case scenario, because it's better to give a price, and when you end up with your actuals, you end up with a lot lower bill. That is 100 times better than giving a low price and for it being $10 over. So that's why we do that. We go with the absolute worst case scenario. I appreciated that. So his worst case scenario was 4.2. Our actuals last year and what we're talking about, we're not talking about apparatuses or anything. We're simply talking about 18 fire positions. This is what we're talking about. It's the labor. This is what the labor costs. So when he gave us a price of 4.2 and the actuals came in at Oroville at 3.9, and Chief Messina said that you're at 4.2, but I said, let me know what in your experience, what is the real number for a community and contract of our size? And he said, you're gonna come in somewhere around 3.5, 3.6. So it's actually cheaper. And then you're right, we're not responsible for the CalPERS after we pay off what we owe. But, so anyway, those are the real numbers. They did come in with an increase. They were very upfront. Hey, we just thought we'd let you guys know that there was a discount. That's where the discount came in. The discount for the last 2 years, the governor had given $2.5 billion to discount benefits for first responders, fire personnel. That 2 years is up now. It was up December 31st. So your discount is no longer in play. The discount was in play when the proposal was written. Those were the rates. So now the discount is gone. So they said it could increase by $500,000 to $600,000. I noticed that we put 600,000 on here, to be fair. We don't want to lowball anybody. But the increase for those 18 positions, it's 18 positions. It don't matter what their patch is. This is 18 positions. The increase is gonna happen. Mr. Brown is absolutely correct. It doesn't matter who they are, what their patch is. That increase is coming. So you can't take this low number and that high number and say that this is what it is. You have to consider what actuals are going to be. And the reality of it is the city of Oroville is buying into a higher level of service, and the price is actually cheaper. So that's it. That's what I have to say. Anybody is welcome to contact me if you still want to beat this thing up, but I'm telling you, how the story is told cannot dispute how the numbers read, and we all have the numbers right here. If anybody wants that, it's on the website, or I'll be willing to give you a copy of it. But this is what it is. So I appreciate all of you for entrusting us in making these decisions. We were elected to increase the level of service. I think that just in a couple of short years, some members on this dais have done that, and I believe that the old guard has set still for 30 to 40 years. So I am thanking you for trusting us with that. We're not afraid to move forward. Councilmember Pittman.
Thank you. I won't respond to your comments as you didn't respond to any of my comments, so I would say that I prefer you not to mention what I said or I didn't say because there seems to be a difference between that. The issue of Cal PERS is very simple. You as a contract agency paying for 18 fire positions will continue to pay for those positions. It doesn't matter who's retired, whose name it is. And yes, we'll be paying Cal PERS costs. Every contract city that CAL FIRE has is paying PERS costs for firefighters. All you have to do is look it up on the PERS website. And if they transfer to CAL FIRE, guess what? We're going to be paying CAL FIRE's PERS costs for those 18 positions that we contract with. And if you want to know about unfunded liabilities, we just talked about the city of Oroville's unfunded liabilities. Anybody know what CAL FIRE's unfunded liability is? It's $14 billion for police and fire in the state of California. It's $14 billion. So I am looking at it from a taxpayer protection point of view. Do we want to work with a CAL FIRE or CAL PERS liability under 20 million, or whatever it is currently, or do we want to join the state's $14 billion liability, unfunded liability? You just look it up on the website. It's easy to get to. Again, it is not a cost savings. This is a cost factor. I mean, it's interesting to me that people talk about level of service and they have no idea what that means. None. There's only 3 people in the room that are fire personnel, 4 people in the room that understand what level of service is. And that's my final comment. Also, the city of Oroville does, in fact, offer retired medical. Now, if you didn't know that, we passed a resolution to do that to our personnel. So we do offer retired medical to our staff. Thank you. That's all I got to say.
Anyone else? Does this require a vote, Mr. LeGros?
We need direction on this, Mr. Mayor.
I'll make the motion to pass the agenda item as agenda-sized. Oh, I make a motion to pass item, let me look at the agenda item here to make sure it's identified.
I'm sorry, is there a second?
Item number 12.
I'm going to make a second motion that we decline item number 12 and that we continue the course as written.
Second.
Second motion will be voted on first.
Yeah, let me clarify this one. The city has adopted Rosenberg's Rules of Order. Under Rosenberg's Rules of Order, and again, I sort of am the de facto parliamentarian, you can have up to 3 motions on the table at any one point in time. And when it comes time for a vote, the rules do state that the last motion that was made gets voted on first, and then you go in successive order until one of the motions passes. If there are motions that are if there are motions that are diametrically opposed to each other, which is what you have here, then if one motion passes, then the other one automatically has failed at the same point in time. So you wouldn't need to vote on them both. If you have motions that have different components, then you would need to vote on both of them. But we've got one motion that was made and seconded, and then another motion was to adopt item number 12. And then I didn't hear the second, but I heard a motion, and then was there a second? So you've got a motion and a second to not adopt number 12. So those are diametrically opposed. So the second motion, according to Rosenberg's Rules of Order, would be voted on first. And then pending the outcome of that, then we'll see if that does not pass, then we will go to the first motion that was made and vote on that motion. Does that make sense?
Ready?
So this is on the motion made by,
To decline item number 12.
this is on the motion made by the mayor and seconded by the vice mayor to decline item number 12.
Motion carries with 4 yeses and 3 nos.
We've already done our reports and discussions and future agenda items. This meeting will be adjourned till May 3rd, 4 PM. Thank you.
I need tomorrow.
What are we signing?
I told